This is Nashville. We're nice. Folks in the back, unless you absolutely want to stand for several hours, feel free to come have a seat beside one of these folks with their hand up. Okay. I'm Joey Hargis. I'm the Metropolitan Zoning Administrator, and I welcome you to the Board of Zoning Appeals today for its regularly scheduled meeting of August the 20th, 2026. The board would appreciate if you would please silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate so that they do not interrupt today's proceedings. We would appreciate it. The procedure today will be to go through all the cases set for public hearing today that are listed on our agenda. We do have, I do have some preliminary announcements about cases, and I'll get to those in just a moment. I do want to say it is completely coincidental that my shirt happens to match many of the people in this room. So unless you folks were in my closet at 6:15 this morning, I had no idea that we were going to wear the same color. So it's purely coincidental in that regard. We'll go, like I said, we'll go through all cases set for public hearing today. The board will hear the cases. They'll discuss and ask questions of the folks that are in front of them, and the board will discuss and render a decision today on all cases that are set for the agenda today. The code that requires that 4 members of the 7-member board be present to constitute a quorum. I have 6 members present. The 7th one has texted me, and she is on her way in trying to find a parking spot. So she'll be in here in just a moment. Again, I do have some preliminary announcements with the cases. Some of the cases listed on our agenda today will not be heard, either because they've been postponed or deferred by the appellant, or the cases have been withdrawn. The following cases that I'm about to read, if you're here for any of those cases will not be heard today and will be heard on the date listed that I call out on. The first case of which will be case 2026-53, Seven Hills Clubs Incorporated, appellant and owner of the property at 1317 Hildreth Drive, requesting a special exception. That case has been postponed by the applicant until September 17th, which will be our next meeting. That'll be in this room at 1 p.m. And they are awaiting additional, for board members, they're awaiting the traffic study that you requested. It's not ready yet, so they're hoping it will be ready by the 17th. The next case that will be postponed and not heard today is the bottom of page 2, case 2026-121. Miss Adley Kinsman is the appellant, Story House Revocable Living Trust, owner of the property at 4509 Harpeth Hills. She's requested an item A appeal challenging my interpretation in the RS40 zone district. That case will be postponed until September 17th as well, at the request of the applicant. Okay, turning to page 3. The center of page 3, case 2026-126, the Scott Avenue Church of Christ. That case has been withdrawn by our office. They do not need to seek a special exception. Folks that may remember, Scott Avenue Church of Christ burned pretty significantly, almost all the way to the ground. They're wanting to rebuild their structure in the same location and same height that they had previously. So our office is issuing that permit. Turning now to page 4. Top of page 4, one case that would have been heard today, originally scheduled, case 2026-128, Catalyst Design Group, is the appellant, in Apex Riverstone LLC, the owner of the property at 230 Cumberland Bend, requesting a variance from the parking requirements. That case is being deferred until September 17th as well, at the request of the applicant. And counsel to opposition have both agreed to that deferral. Center of page 4, case 2026-129, Miss Catharine Hollifield, 204 Cantrell Avenue, requesting a variance in side setbacks in the R8 district. That case was withdrawn. She does not need a variance, so pleased to report that that case was withdrawn. And looking through the remaining of our agenda, that completes our preliminary announcements portion. So if you're here for cases 53, 121, 126, 128, those cases will not be heard today. Will all be heard, except for the one that was withdrawn, will be heard on September 17th. Okay. All right. The board, just to A reminder for folks, the board is vested to hear the cases before us and as outlined in Section 1740, 180 of the Metro Code of Law. The code requires that, like I said before, four votes to have a hearing. The code also requires that you have 4 affirmative votes from the members in front of you to have your case approved. There may be cases on this agenda today, which there may be less than 7 members present participating, but in any of those cases, you still need 4 affirmative votes for the remainder of the board for your case to be approved. All right, Mr. Chairman, we'll, before we get started with our consent agenda, the board does allow elected officials to address this board should they wish to. Are there any elected officials present that wish to address the board at this time? All right, seeing none, we will proceed. All right, Mr. Chairman, prior to today's meeting, the chair reviews the cases on our agenda, and if, in his opinion, the case meets the criteria for the application that they've requested, and he feels that testimony would not alter the material facts, he recommends the cases for what's called our consent agenda that'll be approved at a voice vote at the beginning of this meeting. So the next cases that I'm calling are cases that are recommended for the consent agenda. If you are here in opposition to any of these cases, please raise your hand, and I will recognize you, and we'll pull that case off consent, and we'll hear it in the order that's listed here on this agenda. Okay, the first case recommended for the consent agenda today is listed on the bottom page 3, Catalyst Design Group, case 2026-127, Don Harden Group, owner of the properties located at 1600 Buchanan Street, requesting a special exception in the street and setback and height requirements in the CS zone district to construct a new 3-story mixed-use office building. Are there any parties present in opposition to the case at 1600 Buchanan Avenue? Okay, seeing none, I want the record to reflect that Ms. Christina Carpenek will not be participating in that case. Board members, we don't have I know we normally do these ahead of time. We've got a couple of members that need to recuse from cases. Do you want to take those, Mr. Chairman, individually as we go, or we can?
I'd say just take them as we go.
Okay.
Would be fine.
All right, we'll go ahead and hear a motion and a second on case 127 for approval.
So that's been moved for the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay, that passes, so that goes on the consent agenda.
All right. The next case recommended for the consent agenda is on bottom page 4, case 2026-130. Mr. Joseph Randolph, the appellant, Road 2 LLC, the owner of the property at 1622 and 1624 Eastside Avenue, requesting a variance in the street setbacks in the RS5 district to construct new single-family residences. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 130 on our agenda today? Okay, do have a hand up in the back. We'll pull that from consent, and we'll hear it in the order listed on the agenda. The next case recommended for the consent agenda is case 2026-131. 2601 12th Avenue South, LLC is the appellant and owner of the property located at 2601 12th Avenue South. They are requesting a special exception from the street setback requirements in the CS zone district to construct additions and a new commercial building at the intersection there at 12th Avenue South. It includes an enclosed porte-cochere. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 131 on 12th Avenue South? Okay, seeing no hands, Mr. Chairman, that one has no opposition present. And then finally, the final case recommended for consent, we can do these together, is at the bottom of page 5, case 2026-133, the Wagway Group. It's the appellant, Site Uno General Partnership, owner of the property at 4040 Lebanon Pike, requesting a special exception in the CL zone district for a kennel. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 133 at 4040 Lebanon Pike? Mr. Chairman, seeing no hands.
So we're voting on for the consent agenda 131, 132, and 133.
131 and 133.
133.
Yes, sir.
What happened to 132?
132, your recommendation was for consent with the conditions from planning. The
Right.
appellant does not agree to those conditions.
Oh, okay. And on 131, does the appellant agree to the planning conditions? Because that was also,
Please, so is the applicant present for the case on 12th Avenue South? All right. The conditions from the Planning Commission were that the sidewalk requirements would have to conform with the major collector street plan. Are you agreeable to that condition? Yes, sir. Okay.
okay, so that will go on consent with the agreement from the applicant to comply with the planning conditions. So we'll be voting on 131 for consent and 133. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any opposition? All in favor? Okay, so those two go on consent.
All right. If you're here for the cases 127, 131, and 133, your cases have been approved. You're free to go. You're also encouraged and invited to stay with us for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to with all these other folk. And I see them departing, so per usual, Mr. Chairman, no one ever takes us up on that offer. Okay, Mr. Chairman, before we begin, there's discussion about maybe the sequence of events today.
Right.
Did you have a direction for me?
So there was a discussion about, because so many people are here for the Cheekwood case, and we have a few other cases that probably won't take as much time, taking the Cheekwood case last. Any thoughts on that?
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Okay, so I'll make a motion then. We move the Cheekwood case to the bottom of the docket.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay.
Okay, so what just happened, our case, that's case 120 regarding the Cheekwood Botanical Gardens will be heard at the very end of our agenda today. We'll take all other cases ahead of it. And the first of those cases that we will hear from is at the top of page 2. It's case 2026-63, TN Trans, the appellant and owner of the property located at 7166 River Road, Pike. Mr. Trans requesting a special exception to allow for a meditation garden in the R80 zone district. The appellant seeking to construct these meditation gardens. The board, you did have a hearing on June 18th and postponed the hearing, asking Mr. Tran to provide some additional information to the board. He has submitted a new site plan and information which I'll display to you here in just a moment. Let me pull up the case. Is the applicant present for case 63 on River Road, Pike? Okay, sir. If you would, please, sir, come forward and have a seat at the table. And I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess I forgot a couple announcements for the group that's here for the other cases. On the microphone stands at the 4 seats that are here, there's a little button just dead center at the base of the stand. You'll push that button. There's a little green light that will light up, as the gentleman just did there. And when you come before the board, you'll give us your name and address and then make your presentation to the board that time. So cases with opposition. All right, let's start first with cases that do not have opposition. The appellants will have 5 minutes to present their case to the board, and then the board will stop the clock. That clock is located just to the right of where you're sitting, gentlemen, up on the stand there in front of Ms. Davis. The clock will run for your testimony. It will stop for any questions the board might have of you and your answers to those questions, and then once you're back into testimony, we'll restart that clock. So applicants will have 5 minutes to present on cases without opposition. Cases with opposition, you'll have 10 minutes. So what that means, and we'll talk about the item A case at Cheekwood, the timing's still the same as far as time, but who speaks when is a little different on that case. But generally, the applicant, the person who filed the appeal, will go first and present their case to the board. Of their case, they will want to save some of that 10 minutes for rebuttal period. Then next, in a traditional variance or special exception case, we'll hear from opposition next. And the opposition in total will have 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes total for everybody who wants to speak, not one speaker at a time. So If you do have multiple speakers on a case and you're opposed to it, please work out your times accordingly. And when that time's up, it's up. And then, like I said, the appellant will have a chance to rebut anything brought by the opposition. The item A case timing we'll talk about before that case, a little bit more involved. But that's it. Are there any parties present for this case, case 63, in opposition to said case? Okay, we do have some hands there and back. So we'll get the clock reset for 10 minutes. I'll cover what we covered the first time. I'll display on the wall here by PowerPoint of what's changed, what they submitted, and then I'll turn it over to these gentlemen to discuss. Okay, as I said, this case came before the board previously at its June 18th meeting. The gentleman before you requesting a special exception as a religious institution seeking to build a meditation garden. This was a conceptual plan that they submitted at that hearing. This board postponed asking for some additional information regarding site plans. Just to review, subject lot is the orange lot located on River Road Pike, and this was the subject property here. It's highlighted in red with the red pen on it. And this was the revised site plan submitted by the applicant in the case, showing parking areas and the meditation sculpture area and delineating setbacks on his plan. Okay, with that, gentlemen, you'll have 10 minutes. I'll get the clock reset for you here. And if you would, please identify yourselves, name and address, and present your information to the board.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tang Duong, and I live at 402 Village Hall Place, Nashville, Tennessee, 37215. I'm here with the, next to me is the owner of the property, and I'm helping him in English. As the administrator explained, we are here today because we have submit the additional information that the board has requested from the June the 18th meeting, and we hereby submit the site layout plan, which shows all the parking and the area for all the statues, and also all the setback, including the setback from the right-of-way of River Road Pike. And also, we have submitted a description of the visit schedule to the meditation garden. And we said that the visit is once a week on Sundays during the daytime. And the parking there is about 18 parking stalls. That's it, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? You've got some opposition, so you may want to reserve time so we can hear what their issues are, but do we have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, before you get any further, I missed something on my preliminary announcement. Both members, Ransom and Davis, were not present at the prior hearing, so just need to...
I was here.
Okay, I apologize. Never mind.
You were asking any questions?
Yeah.
Did you have a question? Okay.
Thanks for providing an updated site plan, and it sounds like it's going to be your plan is a pretty low use once a week.
That's right.
Previously, you mentioned people might come out there throughout the week here and there. Are you thinking it's going to be more concise to just one day a week within those hours?
Yes, once day a week, which is on Sunday, and during the daytime hours.
During the daytime hours. I can't imagine you're not going to have anything out there that's amplified or creating any noise or anything else other than just simply people parking. I mean, it's a meditation garden, right? So I'm assuming you're not planning on having any type of services or gatherings or anything like that at the garden,
No,
right?
sir, just this meditation garden.
Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
If I may, I have one additional question. And I appreciate the plan, and I know it's just pretty much basic, bare plan, but I understand you are planning the parking spot near the front of the meditation garden. So I think I will hear from the opposition, but as a neighborhood point of view, they may appreciate hiding the parking with some sort of landscaping, so you won't see so many cars, as you drive by. So do you have plan to have some kind of landscaping to kind of hide parking or cars?
As you can see from the site plan, these two parking are at a different level because the layout of the land there is sort of like a bench. So the first parking lot is at a lower level than the parking lot, upper parking lot. And in between, of course, there will be a buffer zone, there will be land and landscape.
So your intent is make it rather invisible from the street?
That is correct.
Thank you.
How far will the first row of parking be from the street? I see a 12-foot dimension, but it doesn't go all the way to the street.
It's 36 feet. It's from the right-of-way. So it stays off of the River Road Pike future right-of-way.
Okay, so that, where it says 72 in the drawing, that's not the center of the road. That's not what we're seeing there.
But we assume that the center of the existing river road is at the center and go from either side of 36 foot for the future right-of-way, this setback right-of-way.
It's just the drawing's hard to understand. So there's a line that says River Road Pike. That's not the center of the road, or is it the center?
It's the center of the road.
Center of the road. And then 36. So I don't know how wide River Road Pike is to know how far the parking lot is from the property line. Or
Yeah. We would assume that this is 11 foot wide.
11 foot, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there's 11 feet from the side of the road to the beginning of the parking lot.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So there's really not a 36-foot setback to the road, it's a 25-foot setback. Right, okay. Okay, any more questions? Okay, you have over 8 minutes left for rebuttal, so we'll hear from your opposition if you'll stay available. And opposition, you can come on up.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. If you guys will return
If
to
you
your
can move
seats.
over, but we'll have you come back up after they speak.
Oh, move over?
Or if you can just go sit back down,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
have you come back up because they have 3 or 4 people here. They're
Okay,
probably going to need all
we'll
those
go
chairs.
back to
Yeah,
the back seat.
we'll bring you back up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, as these gentlemen depart, if the parties in opposition will come forward. Do have 4 seats available for you. Again, like we talked about at the beginning, there's a little button on the bottom of the stand.
I do have some documentation to share with you all for the record if you all would like it.
If you'll make sure, is your green light on there?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
all right. And whoever's going to talk first, please give us your name and address.
Jeremiah Pyron, 7518 River Road, Pike. Would you like this documentation now? Okay.
Okay, I think everybody has the handouts.
Okay. I am a property owner at 7518 River Road, Pike, who passes this twice a day, and am speaking in opposition to this case. Before addressing these conditions, I want to raise a threshold question for you all. How can a responsible decision be made without knowing the full details of what is being proposed? At minimum, the board should have before it a binding site plan, architectural drawings and renderings, traffic study with site distance analysis, septic feasibility study, stormwater and drainage plan, lighting plan, geotech report, given the slope and topography, which I don't know if you can see that image, but it is straight up, a complete description of the proposed use, what activities will take place, how often. Now, I know that we did receive some information today, and that was very helpful. At what hours and how many people, but just as any business, or I'm in commercial real estate, as any time that you are coming before you for a specific plan or a zoning change, providing details about that structure and seeking approval for that. So that's the same request that's happening here. The applicant should be required to do the same before the board acts. Standard requirements in any land use approval process. Without them, you're being asked to approve something that you cannot fully evaluate, much like the detail of the setback, which you had requested earlier. So under 1716-150, they must satisfy the exemption conditions. And based on what was presented, there are significant questions as to whether these conditions have been met. Section A, burden of proof. The burden is on the applicant to demonstrate all required standards are met. Without the studies and plans, the burden has not been met. Section C, integrity of adjacent areas. Adequate public facilities must be available to accommodate this use. They've not been demonstrated. I don't know, again, this is new information, so I don't know if there's bathroom facilities required for this. But again, kind of to the point before about what is required for the use that's being presented. Design and architectural compatibility. This corridor is characterized by mature tree canopy and rural residential properties. Development of this site for recurring public assembly use will require clearing, grading, and parking that removes mature trees that cannot be replaced. That permanent altercation is incompatible with the character of the surrounding properties and this road. Traffic impact is one of the largest ones, and the images that you see before you hopefully show that. The driveway sits on the left side of a westbound curve that bends to the right. The westbound vehicles turning left into the site must cross the eastbound lane, and neither the turning driver nor the eastbound driver can see each other until it's too late, mostly due to the rock wall as well as the hill. So this is a hazard that exists today with no additional traffic. Adding recurring peak assembly traffic makes it materially more dangerous. I travel this every day, and I can speak to that. There was a fatality last night on River Road, 2 miles from this. It is a very dangerous road, as you all are probably aware, while the speed limit is 40, if I go 45, I'm tailgated the whole way home. The board has explicit authority to require a traffic impact study. We ask that it do so before any approval is considered. And of course, the hazard protection, the slope, unresolved septic question, and the site distance issue at the driveway all represent unaddressed hazards to persons and property. So this section exists precisely to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding community, and I've not seen that demonstrated in the compliance with those conditions. And without complete documentation, plans, and studies, I would feel that the board cannot make a responsible finding that these conditions are met. We ask that this is denied or at minimum deferred until the applicant has provided everything necessary for a full informed decision. But if so, you do approve request, like you had requested, a landscape buffer along the property line and road frontage to help buffer that view shed that's going to be damaged by the clear cutting of those trees. No exterior lighting visible. You ask about sound, so that's that point. No amplified sound, restricted hours of operation, which they said just on Sunday. And any future structure requires a new BZA application. And all studies listed above completed and reviewed by Metro before any permits are issued. And so if they do get the approved use, have that be a 1 year, if it is not commenced within 1 year of permit issuance, the special exception expires and the applicant must reapply. Ensuring the board has opportunity to reassess the conditions at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on, I have a question for you, and thank you for providing these pictures. It looks pretty thick and wooded already. Won't there be a kind of natural landscape buffer there? Just looking at these pictures, it looks like the vegetation goes pretty much almost
No.
It does not?
No, sir.
Okay, if you can, for the record, I'm sorry to interrupt, if you can give us your name and address.
John Demertasi, I'm the property owner of 7140 River.
Okay.
I'm the closest home to this.
All right.
So to answer your direct question, sir, no. The front is wide open. There's a wide gravel area from the former gas station that used to reside on that property.
That's where the gate is, the metal gate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you seen these pictures?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sir, can you make sure that you have your mic on, please? Thank you.
All right, thank you for answering that. Whoever was going next, I probably interrupted, so.
So a couple other questions here. Is there going to be a requirement for a traffic study for this special exception?
We can order a traffic study. That will be up to the board. They will have to get permits from NDOT.
Can we
To go-
formally request that occur?
Well, that's, they're going to have to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hargis, but they'll have to get approval, a permit from NDOT, will they not?
They will have to get approval from NDOT.
And I think they'll do the sightline study and all the other stuff.
So then I guess the follow-up question to that is a parking plan typically feeds from the results of a traffic study per 17.20.030. Will that also be a requirement for this special?
Well, that's not an NDOT requirement. We can require a traffic study, and that's something we can discuss. I mean, typically for a traffic study, I mean, they're only adding like 17 parking spaces. They're only going to be using this once a week, and I kind of doubt they're going to be using it a lot in the winter because it's not a covered structure. But that's something we can discuss.
And just to clarify, I think, and maybe it's semantics, but a traffic study studies more of the traffic than it does sightline, safety, everything else. NDOT, from my understanding, is more concerned with the sightlines, pulling out safety, speed, all that stuff, and that's kind of by default. The traffic study is, putting 100+ parking spots there, and it's going to understand the dynamics of the traffic on that street and what kind of traffic it's introducing to that street at that time. So they're both street related, but one's more safety.
Understood. So again, I'm just referring to Metro Council requirements here. So 17.20.030 explicitly discusses parking requirements established, right? And if I read this correctly, and I'm obviously no attorney here, but it does say typically the traffic study feeds into a follow-up parking study. Is that something we can formally request during this meeting?
We would have to discuss it amongst the board. It's not by default that it's required. And yes, you're right, you have to lock in the parking spots, but it's not, if someone's adding 2 parking spots, do you think it makes sense to have a traffic study? It might be a little onerous. So it's just something we have to discuss. But we hear what you're saying.
I guess the next item was, is there a plan for any restrooms or use of water facilities at this location?
That's not a question.
Well, there doesn't appear to be on the site plan, but that's not something they're required to have to obtain a special exception for a meditation garden.
And the reason why I ask is this particular property has been denied septic capability not once but twice, originally in 1980 and then again in 2001. I was able to find that on the Metro website. So I just want to make sure if that is a requirement, how would that be addressed for the special exception?
Mr. Harris, there is no requirement for that, is there?
If I'm not aware of it, there's nothing in the zoning code that requires it. If it's required, it would be required as part of the permitting process through either the building code, depending on the occupancy classification. But I couldn't speak to what that is.
Now, one of the last question I had is, will there be a requirement for an occupancy permit and maximum number of users besides what was been verbally established today?
The fire marshal's office will set a maximum occupancy for the use as part of the permit.
And along with that, will there be documented, hours of operation besides what was verbally stated this afternoon?
The board can place those conditions upon it,
Okay.
should they wish to.
And then last question was around noise ordinance. Obviously, this is a rural area, R80 zoning, agricultural zoning typically nearby. What would be the noise requirements?
Whatever the code requirements are, I couldn't tell you offhand what the decibel level is out there, but that's not something, if there's a violation of the code, you can report that. I wouldn't think with a meditation garden you're going to have problems with noise.
That is all. Thank you.
All right.
There we go. I'm Kim Chappell. I'm 7512 River Road Pike, right down the road from Jeremiah. And I don't have anything as professionally prepared as these gentlemen. I've lived out there for about 20 years, and as somebody that has pulled somebody off River Road and resuscitated them, this curve poses a large problem. So I'm hopeful that the traffic study will be conducted, and that's without any parking, without people going in and out, without people being there on a routine basis. I think previously before that, the people that were there were there minimal times. And I would argue that the most prepared people to travel this road, because it's not a straight road, that looks like a straight road, and you can tell it's not, are the ones that live out there that frequent the road. It's the people that aren't out there often that are caught unaware. So, again, thank you for your time. That's all I had to say.
I'm James Sullivan. My parents owned that part where they're talking about. There used to be a store. There's still gas tanks are still there. This parking thing I got right here will not fly. If you go down there, it ain't 10 foot from the road. How are you going to put a car in a 10-foot? They got a bluff there. They pushed out 8 or 10 foot bank. How are they going to put a car? How are you going to put a car there? There ain't no room there. And this is a state highway, and and I built property, and I know you got to come back so far, give it to the state and get property. From this plan, I can't see how you could ever get a car. You couldn't even get a Volkswagen in this little place. And they're saying you put parking lot there? It ain't no way. If you go out there and look at it, they got it built up, and it's barely enough for a car between the car and the bluff. You probably could get a car. You could park it parallel. Like I said, we owned it, and I know what's there, and I've seen a mini wreck there. I lived there 70-something years, right in the area, and it's just a bad. When you got a name on it, you call Metro and there's a fire or something down there. Well, it's past Sullivan's Curve or Dead Man's Curve. They mean it, because it's just like this. It's got some of the banking down below it is as bad as NASCAR. It's like this to get around it. And I can't see why. And I can't see what they want to put on that piece of property, because like I said, my daddy owned it. And I can never see how they could ever do anything like that. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the opposition? Okay, thank y'all. We'll have the applicants, the applicant will come back up, please. Is the applicant back there somewhere?
The applicant's present. If you wish to come back to the table.
Yeah, you don't have to. If you have anything that you want to say, you're welcome to, but you don't have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have anything more to say.
I tell you what, since you're up here, board members may have a question or two for you, so let me see. Does anybody, yeah, Ms. Johnson's going to have a question, so if you would, please have a seat. If you'll make sure those microphones are still on green. They're still turned on?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes, my additional question is, plan for the parking. I know you provided the 18 parking space. Do you plan to provide all these at once, or just go by stages? First, maybe 9 parking, like lower part you said, and then coming to second upper part? Or are you planning to do the parking construction all at once?
Nó hỏi là có 2 cái parking ở phía dưới phía trên, thì chùa sẽ tính làm là mỗi một cái parking theo một giai đoạn, như làm ở phía dưới trước, rồi sau đó cần thì làm ở phía trên. The owner said yes, the parking will be installed according to the need. So the lower parking will be done first. And if there's more need, then the upper parking, about 9 parking stalls will be installed later. Yeah, so it is planning by stages.
Okay, so that feeds into the question I had. Are the 18 spaces necessary, or just graphically what is being shown?
Ông hỏi là 18 chỗ này có cần thiết hay không?
Cần để bắt đầu xây chứ. Nhưng mà cũng trước tiên thì mình cũng không cần nhiều như vậy, chứ cần chỉnh cái được rồi.
Yes, the ultimate plan is we anticipate that we'll need 18 parking stalls, but initially we'll be happy with 9 stalls until the future need arises.
And the opposition mentioned maximum number of use at any given time on Sunday. I understand that, as well as hours of operation. So I wanted to ask the current anticipated maximum number of people if there were 9 spaces. Are we thinking 20, 25, 9?
Well, yeah, yes, sir. When we go from our current church to the meditation garden, usually they would share cars. Mm-hmm. So probably 4 people per car. So we don't anticipate more than 20 people currently.
And
so you're talking about 4 people per car. So it's about 5 cars driving there once a week on Sunday. Most likely during the spring to fall, winter, I don't anticipate people would go there.
And in your letter mentioned daytime on Sunday is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. What you're thinking?
Usually after the church service, which is after in the in the afternoon, started from 12 or 1 o'clock until maybe 5 or 6 o'clock. That's the maximum.
I mean, I guess we can kind of keep asking questions to get the details that this plan's lacking for a typical special exception, you know?
There's a few things about the plan that I wanted to point out. Is its beginning point is the future right-of-way. It is not the current right-of-way. That's the 72 feet. So the edge of what they're showing is, I guess their property line is 36 feet from the center line. Then that 12-foot dimension that was mentioned does not go all the way. I think there's a pavement line missing. So it looks like there's a 5-foot strip allocated there.
But from just looking at the photographs that were provided and aerial photographs from Metro Property Search, I'm not measuring this, but I'm unable to see how this parking structure would fit without some major excavation or blasting. And, you know, the applicant did mention that, you know, they're on a budget, and that would be a budget breaker. So, you know, it almost looks like this would be better, parking would be better at the top of the plateau. You can almost kind of drive around to the top and you can see some aerial photos. You can't see from the photos that unfortunately were submitted, but you can kind of follow that drive. If you look on the photo where the entrance is in the front, on the front, it curves around and goes up to the back. And then there's a bit of a plateau up there. This aerial photograph shows miscellaneous trash, debris, and other stuff, but almost feels like that might be a better spot for the parking. But I don't know, I'm just used to seeing a lot more information, and this particular lot has a little hair on it due to the narrowness of the road and the speed of which cars drive on it beyond the speed limit and the curve and topography. I just don't know if we're going to be able to ask enough questions to make us feel comfortable, but at least me, I'll speak in my capacity.
I'm probably more worried about what happens on the road. If someone's stopping to turn in and being hit by a speeding car, and I think that's what the opposition's concerned with. I'm probably more concerned with that than where.
I've assumed that's something NDOT is going to be on top of.
One question for the applicant, because
I always assume they're going to take care of the sightline stuff, and I think we have to take care of the setback.
True.
Yeah. The engineering firm or whomever you guys hired to do this plan, do they go to this site and take measurements and, you know, compare that to what they might be able to do? Because traditionally we see what people want to do overlaid on top of what is already there. So it gives us some perspective.
Since our church is a real small one, we don't have the budget to hire engineering firm or architect. So this is done by the owner, the Reverend Tien Chen. We've been out there and looking at the lay of the land.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted for us to discuss is use-wise, trip generation-wise, noise-wise, light-wise. This is as light as it gets.
Right.
A single-family residence, one house, on average, is going to have more than 9 trips per day. So 40, 45 a week. Would be, if we choose to go down that road, and in favor of reducing the parking. I think 18 is excessive. I think if 18 were found to be needed in the future, that it would need to come back. But I'm also struggling with the lack of detail. And there's going to have to be a survey and a full site plan paid for by someone to get a permit. You know, it comes down to you pull that Band-Aid off at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, the applicant, you know, can see that planning and NDOT are generally in favor of it. So it's an assessment that they'll have to make, whether they want to make that investment, knowing that they may or may not get approved. But I mean, I agree. Ultimately, they're going to have to do it, and this is about as light use as you can get. And we could put conditions on that for the opposition that, you know, it can be only used during so many hours and this many parking spots. And if it's used outside of that, they can make a complaint. And if the applicant wants to expand the use, they can come back before us. And I understand their hardship and, you know, lack of funds to produce all this. It's kind of frustrating that you have to spend thousands of dollars, if not more. But a special exception is unique and allows you to do something kind of outside the box in certain areas. And, you know, we didn't make those rules. And I don't think there's enough detail here. And, I mean, I could just, this is not going to, you can just know it's not going to work unless they carve out 20 feet of that. And then that's just not going to happen. Struggling because I'm in favor of it. I just don't have enough information to get there.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very light ask, very light, and I'm okay with 18 parking spaces. It's very, very limited use. I mean, if they will have to come up with the money for the survey and the engineer, and they may find out that it's not going to be practical. You know, it's a very simplistic site plan, but it's also a very simplistic site. I mean, there's no structure on it. There's no, I would want to know that if we approve it, the special exception, which is a very light burden, I think, most of the time, that there be some, we put some condition in terms of a setback from the road as to where I think Mr. Garrigan pointed out, either the parking spaces begin or the asphalt begins, and I don't know what that is. I mean, they're telling us they're giving us 25, but I'm not really sure where the 25 is from. I think there may be
Probably the
some,
width of the road.
What's that?
It's probably the width of the road,
Yeah.
of the existing
Kind of
road.
tracks.
So,
But the fact that we're saying probably is not that good.
And,
Yeah.
you know, there are other things, like, you know, Mitch Johnson had a great idea of having a landscape buffer, but given the situation, that landscape buffer might restrict visibility pulling in and out. So you can have it, but that landscape buffer will have to be pulled back, which kind of further gets into where the parking spaces would be.
yeah, I mean, on the landscape buffer, we usually require that when somebody's building something right adjacent to a residence, or, I mean, we usually, I'm okay without the landscape buffer, and I can't see it as well as the opposition, but it does look like there's some vegetation there, and it looks like it may be directly across from it is not a residence or a business. It looks like it's a cliff and land.
I think the most important concern we have is a site and safety. So wherever the applicant put the parking space, they have to consult with NDOT and then have to confirm that site distance and location, ingress, egress meet NDOT requirement. And without that, they cannot move forward. I think if we were to going into approval route, because of the usage is very, very light, but safety and is the major concern, especially ingress, egress. And so the condition I can think of is consult with NDOT, including the location of the parking and site distance. And if NDOT does not approve, or appropriate, department in Metro does not approve location of the parking, clearly that point cannot move forward, or have to reduce the parking stall, the number of the parking stall. But as far as usage, I think we can condition is like just once a week, Sunday only. And then, maximum parking is, as proposed, no more than 18. And if applicant were to come back and have some structure, they have to come back to us. So we are only approving, if we were to approve, I think in my head, I think we are okay as long as the safety concern is met and usage is limited to meditation use as an accessory use of the religious, facility in other location. And use is just limited to Sunday only before dark. So that's what I'm kind of leaning towards, but I'm interested in hearing, other people's opinion.
I think that makes sense. I think that NDOT should help decide where the ingress and egress are, and I'm just, concerned by what we heard from the opposition and the safety. And so I guess they would be the best ones to decide. So it may not be where it's shown on this current plan.
So you would propose a condition that if we approve the special exception, NDOT, it'd be conditioned on NDOT approving the location of the ingress, egress, and Sundays only?
Yes.
Okay. What about the setback? Is anybody, they're telling us, they're giving us at least 25. Do we want to, my suggestion on that would be to require at least a 25-foot setback, but if NDOT requires more, that they provide more.
We could always, just to simplify it, state type B buffer adjacent to future right-of-way line.
Say that again, type B buffer.
Along the frontage adjacent to the future right-of-way line, because that's a line that's set by the major collector street plan, and that way we're not trying to pick numbers off of something that may or may not be accurate.
What's in a type B buffer? It doesn't have any trees, does it? Or any shrubs that?
It's a mixture of trees and shrubs. My guess is for the canopy, what's there will satisfy it, and they would just be adding understory.
Does the type B buffer cover the setback from the road? Is that what?
It would be, I believe, 10 feet from the future right-of-way.
I worry about just what type of vegetation might be planted there, only because I don't know if you're familiar with the White Bridge Target and trying to pull out of the White Bridge Target. Until very recently, they just took all the vegetation down. You couldn't see. So I'd be worried about.
Well, that's why I'm saying along that future right-of-way line, because
it'd be far enough away from the road.
It would be far enough back. There would be, if the road's 20 feet wide, there'd be 26 feet of right-of-way. And as part of NDOT's, which we might want to add to that, confirmed site distance, they would have them clear out any horizontal obstructions.
Okay, as long as it's not right up there against the road.
Right.
Yeah.
It would not be.
Yeah, because that was.
As long as we specify the future right-of-way.
Okay.
So that condition would be what, type B buffer?
Adjacent to
River Road.
Adjacent to the, just say MCSP right-of-way.
Right away.
Mr. Pepper, and because this is connected to a religious exercise, I agree with our colleagues' suggestion on limiting this to nighttime, just for sight distance, all that other stuff. But I'm a little concerned about limiting the use of the meditation garden just to Sundays. Typically, with any other religious institution for churches, we allow them to do things like lockouts for kids, or if they have support care for different groups at night, we don't stop them from doing it. It's a little different here because of the site, so maybe not nighttime, but I'm a little concerned about limiting it just to Sunday. So if they built this within DOT's recommendations on ingress, egress, and that it stops after night for safety reasons, I think it going on during the week, if someone wanted to use the garden, it shouldn't be problematic.
I'd like to concur with Ms. Davis, and I think also for site safety and maintenance reasons, it's helpful to have folks be able to go throughout the week.
Okay. So, we'd have NDOT approve the ingress and egress. On the type B buffer, I'm a little concerned about that mainly because I just don't I know it's in the code and I know it lays out what you have to have, but one, I don't think they have to, I don't think they should have to put in a landscape buffer because I just don't think it's that kind of property. I'm more concerned with what the right-of-way is. And, I mean, they're coming in telling us they're going to give us at least 25 feet. So the question is that enough? And I would want a condition that if NDOT determines for safety reasons or whatever reasons that they need a bigger right-of-way, they do it. Because a lot of this to me is, we could sit here and postulate about it, but, I mean, that's what NDOT is going to do. They're going to go out there and look at the sight lines and the turn radius and all that kind of stuff. So that's just my thought on that.
Typically, with the building permit, and the parking lot would require a building permit, there would, NDOT would require the MCSP right-of-way be dedicated, and then the zoning code already has a 5-foot perimeter strip for parking lots adjacent to that line. We could go ahead and...
Are you saying NDOT will take care of the setback?
They would.
Okay.
NDOT and the zoning code both would.
Okay, so that solves that problem in my mind. I mean, if NDOT can deal with, I think your concern was the
Just
setback.
safety.
So are you okay with NDOT making that call too?
Yes.
Okay. So NDOT, another condition would be NDOT approval of the setback. And then this seems like we're in agreement to strike the condition that the use only be on Sunday. That we can make a motion. I mean, anybody can. Okay, so I'll take a crack at a motion that we approve the special exception with the condition that NDOT has to approve the location of the ingress egress, and NDOT has to approve the street setback, and then NDOT also has to, well, of course, do the other stuff they do, which is require all the other permitting. But our conditions would be NDOT has to approve the street setback, and NDOT has to approve the ingress egress. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Do we want to add the time frame, dusk to dawn?
If you accept that.
I mean, it's Ms. Davis made a good point, but, it's not a full church, it's a meditation garden at the same time, but it is
Part of a religious practice.
I agree. What I'm trying to say is it's low, like Mr. Pepper said, it's low use.
Yeah, I agree.
And it doesn't sound like the applicant is going to, I can't imagine all of a sudden, because we not restricting to Sundays, they're going to be out there every day in this situation, but it's nice to have the elbow room, especially for that, because you can't sometimes, not everything happens just on Sunday, so I don't know.
Well, I think he's talking about dusk to dawn. He's not talking about the days.
Because of what, lack of lighting, or just
Safety along the road.
safety along the road?
The curve and.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it going past. If it were 50 places or more, I might have concerns. But I mean, I can see situations where people are leaving. It's dusk and people are leaving, and I'm just not in. It doesn't seem to me, based on the location and the use, that this is just going to be the kind of heavy use that we sometimes see with these.
Probably be less than a single-family house,
But
like you pointed out.
But other people may have. I mean, that's so. Mr. Garrigan's potential condition is limiting the use of the parking area. Obviously, not the. Are you talking about limiting the use of the parking area from dusk to dawn?
Access to the parking area be restricted to dawn to dusk.
Thoughts on that?
I think, the hours of operation is originally brought by applicant. So I'm fine with limiting dawn to dusk. But again, because it's a religious institution, we don't want to have like a burden, undue burden for the institution as well. So would like to be, if our legal counsel has any recommendation.
I mean, they request for daytime, for what it's worth.
I think it might be helpful to know from the applicant if that would be a burden on their religious exercise, because if it is a burden on their religious exercise, that would be legally problematic.
Well, I mean, I think they've told us. They've said once a week on Sundays during the daytime. So that's what they put in the record. So. Well, I can add that condition to the motion or not. I mean, sounds like.
I think to satisfy our neighbors' concern, people coming in all the time with the cars, I think it would be a reasonable condition to make the hours will be dawn to dusk.
Okay, so the use of the parking facility would be dawn to dusk. So we'll amend a motion to add that condition. Is there a second?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, next case.
All right. That case is approved with conditions as stated. Our next case, case 2026-123, the Robinson Family Limited Partnership, the appellant 2020 Lindell LLC, owners of the property at 2020 Lindell Avenue, requesting a variance from the digital billboard requirements in the IR zoning district. The appellant is seeking to convert a tri-vision billboard to a digital billboard. Okay, I see the applicant present. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 123? Mr. Chairman, I'm seeing none, so I'll reset this clock to 5 minutes. Give me one second. Mr. Chairman, this case was deferred from our meeting of August 6th. We did not have a public hearing. This case was deferred by the applicant prior to the public hearing, so all members are eligible to participate. Let me again, subject property is located on the west side of the property, adjacent to Interstate 65, just off Lindell Avenue, and I'll pull up an aerial photograph here in just a moment to give you a better perspective. The zoning code requires that digital signs meet a separation distance from residential zoning boundaries. In this case, the existing billboard's located, if you can see my cursor moving right here, making circles around it. The closest residential zoning boundary is sitting in the center line of Interstate 65. It's approximately that blue line right there. And the distance required based on the applicant's height of their digital billboard requires 1,250 feet from that residential zoning boundary. They are providing approximately 105 feet based on our measurements. And the applicant did submit to you, as they have in previous cases, photo light study views, which I'm displaying on the screens now, and I'll keep these up for you, Mr. Cooper, if you need them any further. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to you, sir. You'll have 5 minutes to present your case. There is no opposition present to this case. And if you would, please identify yourself and make your case to the board.
Thank you. Good afternoon. John Cooper with the law firm Holland & Knight, 153rd Avenue South, Suite 2800. I'm here on behalf of the Robinson family. They are the easement holders for the billboard in question at 2020 Lindell Avenue along I-65. They're seeking a variance to convert the billboard from tri-vision to digital. Tri-vision is where you have the 3-paneled louvers that rotate so that you have multiple sign messages. This is very similar to other cases that I've brought to you that have been approved regarding conversion of static billboards to digital because of the proximity to residential, even though there's really no impact on residential property. The billboard is on property zoned industrial restrictive, which permits billboards by right. There's been a billboard here since at least 1996. Again, Joey noted the closest residential boundary line is in the middle of I-65. The other residential properties in the area, there is an MDHA housing development on the other side of the CSX railroad tracks, but that is very heavily screened and the sign face is not visible from that property. The intent of the distance requirement that we're seeking the variance from is to protect residents from ambient light associated with the digital billboards. That is not a concern here, given the buffering and recent LED technology enhancements. As Mr. Hargis noted, we've submitted a professional light study from EXP that shows that the light from the sign will not illuminate any residentially zoned property or any other than the interstate. And will be less than the permitted light levels under both Tennessee and Metro laws. The light study specifically concluded that, quote, the immediate homes are behind a retaining wall and covered by large mature trees, shielding them from the light and view of the boards. Similarly, the properties to the east along Magnolia Drive are all heavily shielded by 2 layers of dense, mature tree growth that will block what minimal amount of light is hitting those areas, unquote. Variances are appropriate under both Tennessee law and the Metro Code when strictly applying the zoning code would result in practical difficulties or undue hardship due to, quote, an extraordinary and exceptional condition of such property, unquote. We believe that this billboard does meet the criteria for a variance. The exceptional condition is the antiquated tri-vision technology for the existing billboard. It's becoming harder and harder to get parts for this technology. And if, you know, in 1996, these tri-vision billboards were kind of the equivalent of a digital billboard today. I mean, that was how you changed messages using one board. We don't believe there's any injury to neighboring property as shown from the light study, since the only property that will experience the ambient light is the industrial property on which the sign is located and the interstate. So we do not believe there's any harm to the public welfare, given the technology improvements and directing the light on site. So we respectfully ask for your approval. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Does the existing billboard have a light shining from below onto it?
Joey, do you have I don't know if the, I've never seen one that didn't, especially in this area, but there may be a street view that shows it.
Okay, so I guess I'm just asking, is there existing light?
Yes, and the light we believe would be less than what you typically have for a static billboard.
And then would the hardship also be in a way that the property line for the residential properties is in the middle of I-65?
Correct.
That's a hardship
Yes, ma'am.
in a way. Okay. Thanks.
So you state the current lights shining on the billboard at night are more impactful on the community than a conversion to digital, and I'm assuming that's supported by your light study.
That is what is provided in, let me see.
I'm assuming.
So the study that, when they did the study, they assumed that the board would be on at its full brightness with no ambient light in the area, which is an impossibility because it's an urban area, and that it would just be showing a clear face. And even that was minimal, less than what the code would otherwise require.
But what you say here is supported by the light study you had done? I'm assuming it was.
Yes, if you can give me a minute, I can find the language from there.
That's okay. I probably won't understand it, having looked at some of those things. But I just wanted you to confirm.
I can help, Russ.
I wanted to ask about the photometrics, the 0.2 foot candle measurements that are on the other side of 65, that's hitting the tree line, correct?
Are you looking at 4A?
If you go back one slide, Joey. the circular photometrics. There you go. So you see the .21 and the .26.
Yes, yeah, it does, it's minimal, but it does.
And that's on the other side of
The
the
other side,
trees. So it's safe to say the trees would further reduce that.
Reduce that, correct.
I have a question. We've seen a handful of these come in front of us. And we have seen, and I don't know if it was a change in design or if original design, but when they've introduced these illuminated kind of LED billboards, right now this is kind of back to back. They're both signs run in parallel. We've seen some almost wedge out a little bit, kind of like a pizza pie, to help aim the point of direction more down towards, where you're trying to essentially advertise. To use the example, since this is up, if you look at the one to the left that goes to, it shoots on the right side of the single malt cigar by Rocky Patel, right? You'd almost want that line to be more parallel with the interstate, shooting the message down that direction, but also the light as well. It's great that there's trees, but they're not permanent, and there are a decent amount of houses here, and it is fairly elevated, because the road is kind of brought up. Do you know if your client explored the idea of doing that? There's probably some cost to it because you've got to reframe it a little bit, but.
I have just texted the client. Hopefully, they are looking at their, yes, they can do the angled, as you suggest.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant, Mr. Cooper? Okay, we'll close. There is no opposition, is that correct?
No, sir, there is
Okay,
not.
we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
We've seen these before. We tend to vote for them, and I don't think anybody still is an expert in nits and candle and lumens. And like an expert witness, the measurements can all be, fungible a little bit to some degree, and but the direction in which it's pointing is harder to justify. So I'm leaning approve it if they can have that directionally point more towards the interstate.
I think what I'm struggling with on this one is the degree of the ask. Couple how, over 1,000 feet to just under 100 feet. And I do think if they were to wedge the sign, as you said, that would direct even more light towards the neighbors
On the other side of the, yeah, that's what you're saying, versus the.
versus what the
industrial, right.
photometrics are today.
Right.
So I think for me, at the very least, we'd want to make sure that if it was to be approved, that the final design would comply with the photometrics that we have been given.
I think, applicant did because they're seeking the variance. If we were to interpret the law as is written, because uniquely, interestingly, interstate is zoned residential. Therefore, they're not able to convert the billboard to digital. So I think applicant really demonstrated why they are asking the variance, and I think he proved they met all the conditions for the variance.
Is that a motion?
I accept. I approve the variance request for this item.
Okay. You make a motion to approve it. Okay. I'll second it. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I was approached during my presentation. We had a case that was listed on the consent agenda previously at bottom of page 4, case 2026-130. The gentleman who raised his hand in opposition approached me while you were discussing this case, and he's withdrawn his opposition. And actually, he was unsure of what was being built.
Okay.
And he is actually, he said you could register me as in support. So.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, and that's
Case 130.
Case 130.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we put 130 on the consent agenda. Okay, there's a motion, a second. All in favor? Okay, so that goes on the consent agenda. So are we down to our last case?
Let's see, Mr. Chairman.
Second last case. Okay. I'll tell us.
Yeah, we are down to case number 132. 2026
132, that's right. All right, that's not on
132 on page 5. Thompson Burton LLC's, the appellants of the property, Hill West End LLC, the owners of the property at 2900 West End Avenue, requesting a special exception for height beyond the maximum requirements in the MUI-A district. The applicant seeking to build a mixed-use commercial building. Are there any parties present in opposition to this case? Call for opposition on case 132. Mr. Chairman, seeing none. For the applicants at the table, let me go through the PowerPoint first, and I will turn it over to you. Subject property is located at 2900 West End Avenue. To give you some landmarks in the area, in the northeast corner of this aerial photograph would be Centennial Park. We've got Vanderbilt to the south. 31st Avenue would be the road that you see where my cursor goes and makes a right-hand dog leg up to the north. Directly across the street, shopping center, I think Ted's Montana's Grill's in there. Okay, that's the vicinity map. This is looking at the subject site. I took these photographs from the side street, not from West End Avenue. This is a view looking south along the property. Get another view of the subject site. These are drawings submitted by the appellant in this case. We'll make a note for the record that Ms. Yoder is recused from this case and will not be participating. A sun study performed by the appellant, and then a diagram of the proposed height at 15 stories at 190 feet. The zoning code in this location allows 15 stories and 150 feet. And I'll leave these exhibits up for Mr. Michael and his witness. But with that, there's no opposition. I'll turn it over to you guys for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hargis. Thank you, Mr. Hargis, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing our case today, members of the board. My name is John Michael from the Thompson Burton Law Firm, 1801 West End Avenue. I'm joined by my friend and colleague Laura Kneebone from the Hastings Architecture Firm. We're delighted to be working on this project together with a local team that intends to build a high-quality mixed-use project at 2900 West End. As Mr. Hargis and Chairman Pepper noted, this was originally recommended for consent agenda, but because there were some conditions from the planning recommendation that were included in that recommendation for consent, we needed to be heard on the case to explain why those are not necessarily applicable here, as each of them are basically addressed throughout the permitting process.
Mr. Michael, and so I can jump ahead, I don't mean to interrupt you. Are you not agreeable to all four of them or just some of them?
That's correct. We would like to have all four of them.
So all four of them, you're not, okay.
That'll be the request, to please approve and not include any of those four conditions for the last recommendation. Again, as stated by Mr. Hargis, this is just height, not sky plane, not any other setback stuff. This is not an SP. This is under the base zoning district. The reason we're looking for the added height is to basically build higher ceilings within each of the several residential units, getting closer to that which is a market standard for higher ceilings in condos, apartments, and any other such dwellings, as well as a little extra height on the ground floor for our commercial or retail partner, whomever we eventually pair with in terms of our lease space there. By adding that height, we build a better product. However, as you'll see from the massing study that's presented here in front of you, actually just a couple back there, Mr. Hargis, with the red and the black, we're only using a part of the footprint of the lot to go into that extra space, black being what's requested, red being what's presently by right. We believe that this will yield a better product and assist with the light and shadow study that you saw earlier. With that, I'll lean on the memorandum of support that we submitted as well, outlining that we meet each of the criteria under the general section for special exception 17, 16, 150, as well as the more specific height-related criteria under 1712, 060G. With that, we believe that we've met those criteria and will ask for your acknowledgement of such and therefore approval of the added height from 152 as shown 190. As to the conditions that were advised, they break down really into three categories: sidewalk, curb cut, materials. While those are more commonly reviewed with certain UDOs or SP projects, in this instance, the curb cuts are 2 in number on our proposed plan. Mr. Hargis, if you're able to go back to your site photos from 29th Avenue side, I'll remind all of you that have known this property for probably most of your lives, or at least your Nashville lives, this has been pull-in on-street parking for decades, at least as long back as I can remember, maybe to my college years. Massively unsafe, massively bad in every way. NDOT would never let anybody design that way in the year 2026. So we're delighted to be getting rid of that and instead reducing to 2 curb cuts accessible from the sides of the building and not from West End, as well as the alley to the rear. In that regard, we still have to go through the permitting process and have that approved, but we don't want to have a preemptive condition narrowing that which we can do, if at all possible.
But is it preemptive? Because what they've said is vehicular access shall be limited to the alley unless otherwise approved by NDOT. So
Unless otherwise
how
approved
is that
seems to
preemptive?
take a certain measure of flexibility out that our clients are very eager to keep away from the BZA approval on height. And that's the second piece of the discussion. We're asking for some extra height. That's not connected to curb cuts.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think the reason we went on consent, I think you meet the special exceptions. I'm for myself just really focused on the conditions, but that planning wants. So, and I'm struggling with, I mean.
With why not, basically?
Yeah, why not on 1? I mean, because I don't think it's preemptive. I mean, what's the problem with it's limited to the alley, and if NDOT lets you use the side street, you get to use, I'm assuming that if NDOT doesn't allow it, it's for a good NDOT reason.
For a safety reason.
Right.
And while I would have to defer to the engineers on your board and other engineers in the audience more quickly, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I just don't want to see it as a restriction coming out of the BZA before we even get into submittal of a site plan for permitting purposes.
Well,
Just let
they'll
have the same bite at that apple
I mean,
later.
you have to go through NDOT anyway.
Correct.
So, I mean, why, I mean, even if we approved it, entrance from the side street, NDOT could not give you a permit for that, right?
Well, bear in mind, you're not approving it from the side street.
Right, but I'm saying hypothetically, if we did.
That's right.
NDOT could still say it's not give you a permit for that.
Theoretically, you could put a condition on us saying we require you to go to the side or to West End side, and yes, NDOT would have the authority to overcome that if, in fact, it was a health safety issue. Forgive me for not remembering the procedural posture that would put us in, but yes, there's a way to get through that. In this instance, though, we're just asking for the absence of the condition here at the BZA level because NDOT and planning get a bite at that apple anyway. And so there's no need to say here, the roughest parallel I can come up with as an example would be nobody who lives here is going to be allowed to break the speed limit when they drive.
Right.
Well, we already have a law to that effect. The procedure already considers that. And that's what I say not only about the sidewalks, the curb cuts, but also the materials. The building code restricts what materials are allowed to be used. As to the curb cuts, same argument we just went through. And as to sidewalks, we actually want to go beyond the minimum required on the 29th Avenue side. We would like to give a little bit more in space, do a little bit more in the way of programming to enhance the pedestrian experience as contemplated under the criteria for the special exception. And so, again, everybody gets the same bite at the apple in terms of metro agencies reviewing in the permitting phase. We would ask that those not be included here at the BZA phase when we're just looking for more height, which has no direct correlation to curb cuts, sidewalk details, or the materials that are used. And those are the primary bases by which we're humbly requesting the absence of inclusion of those conditions with the approval of our special exception.
So on number 2, planning wants you to provide sidewalks along all street frontages consistent with the required standard for each street classification. Where are you not providing sidewalks?
We're providing sidewalks everywhere we're supposed to, and in some places more than requested.
So
why make that a condition is kind of where we're coming from.
I'd say, so it's the same thing. How about 3? Building facade shall be constructed of brick, veneer, stone, cast stone.
Well, I could probably go on much longer than I should. As Mr. Hargis and I have talked about materials questions for years, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the zoning administrator, the zoning division of the codes department, they're not in charge of regulating pretty. It's about massing, more or less. So to get into materials is effectively a roundabout way of saying, hey, guys, make it pretty, don't make it ugly, which is a sentiment with which I agree, is a plan with which I agree. And I will note, I think the board members here participating are familiar when I say this is a Hastings architecture project. Some of the most outstanding projects in the last half century of this city, you could just go down the line and find so many of them that are Hastings projects. I have no concern about pretty, which is the underlying policy rationale behind the materials restrictions. We already have restrictions under the building.
Why did planning put those on there? And I have never seen them put.
I won't try to speak for anyone, but I will say that I see a lot of these in other reports when they come out that are in like very active contextual overlay districts, which we've talked about before in some instances, urban design overlays that are very active, like the one in Green Hills in particular. And so while that may be the basis by which they got included here, again, I don't want to be presumptuous to speak for the folks who reviewed and issued that recommendation.
Let me just jump in with a question, if that's
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
They mentioned a preliminary SP, but this is zoned MUIA, so is that just an error?
There's no SP. I think that might have just been a
Error.
typo.
Typo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've all done it, so I'm not throwing rocks.
Copy paste.
Thanks.
Mr. Cooper, is it fair to say that and you've made the case, and I totally agree, you're asking for height, so it should have nothing to do with access or pretty or anything along those lines. I'm trying to help the discussion with by saying you're trying to leave yourself and your client and designers to the most flexible, as possible, and not just I'm being stubborn.
That's right, and it doesn't serve our client well if we come up and make those kinds of hard-headed arguments for the sake of.
Because
I
understand
all the doors open.
I understand the access question because I tend to agree with you. It gives NDOT an easier no because they read the first part of the sentence. Planning said it should be restricted to the alley. That's what we're sticking with. But that. I don't believe the level of study's been put into that to make that decision. That's a cut and paste comment.
Well, as the site plan shows, and this is pretty deep into the materials that were submitted in conjunction with our case, the access points have one specific curb cut dedicated to subterranean parking for the commercial use on the ground floor level, residential access on the other side of the building. And by splitting those, we think we're actually enhancing the normalcy and safety of the ingress and egress from those positions.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I don't know that planning looked at elevations of both streets to see that again, that was just them saying it should come off the alley because it's planning 101. But, and as far as the materials go, I understand that too. Interpretation of that could result in something that's even less pretty. I've seen 100% brick houses that are the ugliest thing, in my opinion, I've ever seen, and I've seen all siding houses that are beautiful. So I don't like getting into that either. But the one thing I would like for us to consider is if we do go down the road of removing these conditions, that we put something in there about the MCSP frontage, even if it's at a minimum, meet the MCSP requirements, or work with NDOT to, just so it's in there so that if one of the side streets, for whatever reason, doesn't necessitate a sidewalk, that it does actually get one. Because I do think that the walkability of this project is critical. And I'm sure y'all would agree.
Agree with that. And that's why on 29th, we've planned to not only build out the sidewalk, but go broader than in terms of the give that we're making for right-of-way to make sure that we can build a more pedestrian-friendly sidewalk experience, therefore making enough room for the planter strips, street trees, et cetera. Greening it out a little bit. It's not enough just to throw down 4 feet of concrete and hope that that helps. Being able to put in the planter strip, widening the sidewalk itself, makes a residential project like this, and a high-end one at that, all the more sellable, but from a city's perspective, all the more walkable and therefore safe.
Would you want to put, if we remove these conditions, is there a condition, the MCSP condition, do you want to put that on there? It sounds like the applicant doesn't care about that. Okay.
It's not the discussion part yet, but I would like to ask the applicant, it seems like you are trying to achieve more than Planning Commission's requirement is, such as sidewalks. So having all these four conditions, what is the negative consequences? What is the problem if you are trying to make it improve the appearance and access and everything?
Sometimes zoning code, or rather BZA order restrictions become read as you shall do this specifically, and it kind of narrows the focus of the review process, and from a design perspective, narrows the focus on what can be done. We have to go through permitting anyway, as I stated with Mr. Garrigan's question a moment ago. NDOT, planning, zoning, everybody gets a bite at this apple. Stormwater, Metro Water, everybody else. So there's a certain redundancy for some of these. And I guess my concern is I don't want to see a restatement of something that's already in front of us, lest somehow that become something that narrows the focus of what is allowable in the permitting process.
I don't understand because I have experience sitting on the planning body. And planning, when we consider height, such as downtown code, we take that project as a whole. It's not giving the height, and we have to consider effect and also appearance, because we don't want any building to be just a glass only. Right. That won't be interesting as a Nashville Hall. So I think, and especially this section, they do have midterm plan, and I believe they do have midterm UZO design guideline as well. I think that's where planning is coming from. So I see planning as a plan body, and BZA is an enforcing body and enhance what the planning is doing. So I'm a little weary of taking all the condition, what planning applied. So it seems like what you are trying to achieve is more in line with the plan. It may be redundancy, so that's why I'm kind of having a hard time why you are get away with all these four conditions. We can add, since you have to submit the plan, final approval have to come from planning anyway, and so we can add one condition, you may discuss with the plan and make appropriate change, so if it's applicable.
So, Ms. Johnson, which conditions are you concerned about?
I think it's all four conditions is pretty reasonable coming from planning, zoning, and UDO's point, because especially applicant is trying to achieve sidewalks, access, and it has language talk with NDOT, so it's not tied to alley only. So they do have plan to go to 28th Street side as well. So I think all these conditions seems like a basics. And then if the applicant want to further change, they can discuss with planning. So I think all four conditions is pretty appropriate to me.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I think, and Mr. I'll probably disagree about that, because I get Mr. Michael's point about, I don't, and I've never, these are just redundant. I mean, unless otherwise approved by NDOT, provide sidewalks consistent with the required standard. I mean, they're going to have to do that anyway. And the building material issue, I mean, that's that's never been within our purview, what, siding you put on or so. These are kind of, to me, I think unusual things to see from planning.
Maybe there was-
That I've ever seen.
And they're not connected to the requests, which is also a little bit unusual. Like, it's about the special exceptions regarding the height. Normally, they would give us conditions related to that. So I agree with you. Like, it's a little unusual. Not that I definitely understand Member Johnson's perspective,
Ms. Johnson was wanting to make sure that it complies with NDOT and everything else, but I think that's going to happen, even if we take these conditions out, so.
Mr. Michael, were you at this meeting? I'm just guessing, was there somebody there that?
The community meeting?
Yeah, what's the reason
yes,
for planning?
Let's talk about that a moment. That was a sight. Most of the folks who live around here are a little senior to me who came to the meeting. I would say there were about 60, 70 people, Ms. Kneebone. And we had our meeting at a nightclub called Vibes, and it was a sight. And I wish all of you could have been there with me, because the bunch of us sitting around talking about nerdy planning, zoning, and building and development projects in that setting was absolutely hysterical.
Another high school spot like the parking lot?
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. We talked about every little nook and cranny of this, because obviously neighbors want to know not just about the height that you're asking for at the Board of Zoning Appeals. They want to know everything they can learn about it. And so we tried to share everything we could. Obviously couldn't get into some of the negotiations with potential tenants and things like that that are presently protected by NDA. But nevertheless, we shared everything we could. The folks from Hastings, Ms. Kneebone and Mr. Powell, did a great job of working the room, making sure everybody could see everything. But yes, the community meeting was spectacular. I think it's safe to say everybody pretty effectively hated that pull-in, pull-out parking that's been there so long, because it is so dangerous. There was, of course, a desire to not have it be 100% glass. That's quite the glare coming down West End and for all the neighbors. Although I have not discussed it very pointedly with my client, I feel like I can take the bold position of saying we would agree to a condition to not build the whole bloody thing out of ethos. I think that's perfectly fine, or vinyl siding. So that's not going to be a problem with the beauty of the product in the end. Also, there is some argument that going into materials restrictions on a BZA condition is kind of double dipping. The UDO can speak to that if it wants to, and does in some places. And so we could probably amend the UDO to cover some of that if need be. But in this case, what we found with the community meeting was that everybody was really interested in who the commercial tenant will be, or tenants. That was a very, 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 very big point of interest and concern, and that's not been established yet. So even though we kind of kept reminding everyone, we're just asking for added height to make higher ceilings closer to the market standard, people want to talk about some of those other issues. So we did, at a nightclub called Vibes.
A lot of people actually appreciated as well that we were splitting the egresses from the property and allowing some to exit off of 29th and some to exit off the alleyways, so it wouldn't congest everybody onto one street.
Ms. Fox, you were saying something.
Yes, I was just going to say that I don't think planning does get another chance to review this, so I just wanted to correct the record on that issue. I'm not commenting on the...
If I said that, I misspoke. I think NDOT gets another chance to review it, and then, number 2, provide sidewalks along all street frontages consistent with the required standard for each street classification. They've got to do that, or they'll be invalid. They won't be complying with the special exception. Correct?
I think that's right.
And this is an A district, is that correct? Yes, so the A district's going to require that anyways. It's already in the code.
Well, and I think Ms. Johnson and I may have a disagreement about the conditions, but I'll make a motion and we can see how it goes and have a discussion. I'll make a motion that we approve the special exception without the conditions put on it by planning.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'm just concerned about somewhere along the way, especially material design, have not reviewed, and somebody dropped the ball. because we don't want our body, because we work with planning as hand in hand and with other department. And I don't think redundancy is nothing wrong with redundancy. So making sure end product will be come out as intended. And then if applicant is go beyond that condition, it can be further improved. So therefore, especially this is a special exception and have to meet with certain condition. So certain condition could be access and appearance. And I think I see as a whole. And so that's why I really dropping off all the condition and relying on just simple other department process. Sometimes along the way, there might be miscommunication. Oh, BZA okayed not to follow this condition. I don't want that to happen, so I just want to make sure all this condition will be followed.
I hear what you're saying. And I think for me, the only one I struggle with is the access. I think there's deeper reasons that access from 29th, you know, when being able to come in at grade to the commercial below versus ramp down because you're forced to come in off the alley. So, and I agree that redundancy doesn't hurt, but it is very redundant. I mean, the sidewalk, the MCSP sidewalks are going to be required as an aid district. I think the only one that might be a quote add-on is the material statement. But I'm comfortable with that one and leaving that one in too, just because I know it's going to be a beautiful building and it's going to exceed all of those. So something I would throw out there is to adopt with 3 of the 4 conditions.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead, I'm
since
sorry.
we're all talking, I'll add that it's a special exception, so we can look at the general provisions, and the general provisions do talk about design and architectural compatibility. And it does mention exterior materials and colors and building orientation, ornamental features. So I can understand where you're coming from.
Okay, well, I guess we can vote on this motion. If it doesn't pass, we've got others that will make the motion. So there's a motion that has been seconded to approve without the planning conditions. So let's vote on that. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so that doesn't pass, so somebody will need to make another motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve with planning conditions, subtracting the one about access.
So with conditions 2, 3, and 4.
I second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that passes.
Okay, that case is granted with conditions 2, 3,
So I
and 4.
think we're on the, if we can take a short break before we get into the Cheekwood case. I think
Okay.
that's next.
The board will be in recess.
We're going to need it.
Is on page 2, case 2026-120. Mr. Jackson Moore is the appellant, Cheekwood Botanical Gardens and Museum of Art, the owner of the property located at 1200 Forest Park Drive, also known as 111 Cheek Road, excuse me. The applicant in this case has requested an item A appeal that challenges the zoning administrator's issuance of the permit 2026-028967 in the R20 zone district. All right, let's talk. We talked briefly at the beginning about time frames and time limits and that sort of thing. Here's how the procedure will go first. I'll make a very brief introduction at the beginning, just telling the board just some baseline facts in this case. I'll turn it over to Ms. Atchison, is the appellant's representative. Ms. Atchison will have 10 minutes to present her case. Of that, Ms. Atchison will want to save some of her 10 minutes for rebuttal. And then after she departs, or unless the board has questions for her, I'll come next. I'll have 10 minutes to present my side as zoning administrator. I will not take 10 minutes, but if the board has any questions for me, the board can ask questions of any party at any time. So the board could choose to just sit there quietly and hear everybody and then bring us all back and ask questions, but totally their discretion. The next parties that will come will be the legal counsel for Cheekwood will come after me, and they'll have 10 minutes. Both myself and Cheekwood do not have a rebuttal. Only Ms. Atchison has the privilege of a rebuttal in this case. And then after myself and Cheekwood, we'll then have a 10-minute period for whoever else wishes to address the board. As I talked about, there are a lot of people in this room, so you get 10 minutes total. It's not per speaker, not per side, but 10 minutes total. So if there are people who wish to address this board, when you come forward, just like you saw in all the other cases, hit the little button in front of you. The green light on that stand will come on. Give your name and address, and then say what you'd like to say. I would, there are a lot of people that may want to speak, so just be mindful of your time. So with that, let me go back to my desk here. I'll cue up the photographs, and we'll get started.
And Mr. Hargis, I think it'd be also helpful also for us to hear from our associate director at Metro Legal, Ms. Fox. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Actually, my co-counsel, Hannah Zeitlin, is going to go ahead and lead off here.
All right.
Do you want me to go ahead and speak?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, did you asking us to speak now? Is that what we were talking about?
I just wanted to make sure you had time to speak. Well, I think we should start with Ms. Hargis, Mr. Hargis, I think, and then I was imagining y'all coming after him.
That's okay. And I'm happy to yield some of my time to Metro Legal. I will not take a full 10 for my portion. I meant to have this queued up, and I apologize.
Joey,
Oh, yeah, before we get started, Mr. Ransom,
Yeah.
you wish to address him?
Yeah, I just want to say before we begin the case, I want to disclose for the record, I have a longstanding personal and community relationship with a number of people who are on both sides of this case. No one on either side has contacted me directly or discussed the merits, and I've not discussed them with either side, and no one's, I've not prejudged this case either. And I do truly believe that I can hear this case fairly. However, given the nature and number of those relationships, I'm concerned that my participation could create an appearance issue and put those personal relationships in conflict with my responsibility as a board member. So unfortunately for that reason, and out of abundance of caution for this case, I believe recusal is the right thing to do. So unfortunately, I'm going to recuse myself for this case and will not participate in the hearing or deliberation or vote. So just want to put that on the record. Thanks, Joey.
Okay. The record will reflect that Mr. Ransom is recused. Ms. Yoder, the record will also reflect Ms. Anna Yoder is recused from this case due to the specific business relationship, I guess, with her business and Cheekwood Botanical Gardens. So she will not be participating either in this case. What it leaves before you are 5 members of the 7-member board. For the appellant, you'll need 4 affirmative votes of these 5 members to grant your application. Failure to receive 4 affirmative votes today, your case will stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. We have 1 meeting in the next 30 days. That's September the 17th. At that time, any of the 5 members, let's just say we ended up with some vote tally of 2 for, or 3 against, or 3 for and 2 against. At that meeting, they would be allowed to change their vote should they wish to. If the vote remains tied under our rules, your application would be denied by operation of law. with that. So, all right, we'll get started. Let me just briefly, I do not want to get into my testimony time before this. We were contacted by Ms. Atchison's law firm. A letter was sent to me with a list of complaints and grievances that Cheekwood was operating outside the bounds of their use permits. This also in that is the key point that we're going to talk about today is whether the garage issued by my office should have come to the Board of Zoning Appeals. That is the central thing before us today. It is not, I have not made a determination on any of the other letters, any of the other items on Ms. Atchison's letter dealing with traffic, dealing with number of events, dealing with noise, none of that. I am currently looking into those allegations, requesting old records from Metro's archives. Those do take some time. Ms. Atchison and I have been in contact. I will remain in contact with you, the progress of receiving those. So I've not made a final determination on whether Cheekwood's in violation of its use permit. The only thing in front of this board today is whether that parking garage needed to come to this board or not. So that's the central question today. So I advise all parties addressing the board today sort of stick to that. That's the item in front of this board. Just a brief overview. The subject property of Cheekwood's located, I'll do my laser pointer. This is the subject property, Cheekwood's location. And the proposed parking structure would be located in this area. This was the site plan submitted by the appellants upon issuance of the building permit with the drive aisles, ingress, egress, and parking areas. Again, the parking garage itself is subsurface with ground level entry into the parking garage. So that, I will stop there, Ms. Atchison. I'll turn it over to you. And just if you all have seen in the prior cases, if you would please identify yourselves for the board.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chanel Atchison from the law firm of Waddy Atchison, 1030 16th Avenue South. I'm joined by my colleague Tate Harold, who's going to help me to keep time. I represent the appellant in this case. I have a lot to say in a little time, so I need to talk fast. My apologies. All right, Cheekwood does not have the zoning authority to build a parking structure. It's that simple. We have 3 undisputed facts. First, Cheekwood is zoned R20. 2, Cheekwood does not have direct collector street access. And 3, the zoning administrator approved this garage without application to or approval from this board. And those facts matter, because under the Metro Code 1740-530, a zoning permit application must demonstrate compliance with all applicable provisions of the zoning code. So the question now is whether the zoning administrator erred in approving his permit. Unfortunately, he did, and there are 3 reasons why. 1, expansion. Cheekwood operates under a special exception as a non-assembly cultural center. A non-assembly cultural center is a facility whose principal use does not involve the gathering of people for scheduled events or performances. And the code requires that its location and operation be in keeping with the character of and not have an adverse effect on the surrounding area. When a cultural center does not meet the current land use standards but wants to expand, it may, per 1716-140, under the authority of the Board of Zoning Appeals, subject to demonstrating compliance with the general provisions. 1716-150 requires that the applicant prove that their project will not be injurious to the surrounding properties regarding traffic, architecture, noise, and neighborhood safety. Cheekwood does not meet the current land use standards for a cultural center because, among other things, it does not have the mandatory direct access to a collector street. Its visitors must use residential roads. And in order to comply with the general provisions, Cheekwood would be required to demonstrate that the expansion would not adversely affect vehicular and pedestrian safety and convenience. But it can't do that, because Metro's own study, which is on page 22 of your packet, found that traffic on the Highlands neighborhood streets averages 3 times the acceptable neighborhood street volume, in majority due to Cheekwood traffic. Other adverse effects include gridlock, lack of access to resident houses, lack of first responder access, weekly noise ordinance violations, and more. Now, the zoning administrator's letter says that this garage is not an expansion, but this is a 200,000 square foot, 600 parking space structure, a new ticketing center, none of which existed before. There's no straight-faced argument that this is not an expansion. Now let's compare this new building to what this board has actually approved. Cheekwood came to this board in 1978 and received approval for a tea room and a gift shop. In 1996, it came back and received approval for a greenhouse, 2 maintenance buildings, and a stables improvement. And then, nothing. For 30 years, Cheekwood has not returned to this board for approval of another use, not as attendance grew to over 400,000 visitors a year, not for weddings and private events, not for concerts and outdoor music, not for multiple retail operations. Not one BZA use application in 30 years. Existing is not the same thing as authorized. The baseline is not Cheekwood's operations today. The baseline is the non-assembly cultural center use that this board actually approved. Because this is an expansion, the code tells us what had to happen. Cheekwood had to apply to this board, demonstrate compliance with the general provisions, and obtain BZA approval. It did none of those. 2, the uses. Cheekwood's property is, to this day, zoned R20, low to medium density, single-family dwellings, residential. Cheekwood currently engages in restaurant, retail, commercial amusement and entertainment, and outdoor music uses. But the zoning code specifically identifies these as separate uses in 1708030, and the corresponding cells for R20 are blank. That means those uses are not permitted at all, and there is no legal mechanism, permit or otherwise, to authorize them short of rezoning. The zoning administrator points to BZA Order 78328A as historical authority for Cheekwood's restaurant and retail uses. Let's assume the contents of that order in the light most favorable to Cheekwood. The tea room was a restaurant, the gift shop was retail, and they're eligible for grandfathering protection. 78328A did not authorize an event center, a wedding facility, or concert venue. It approved a 65 by 66 foot, 80-seat restaurant, tea room, and gift shop. And that facility that order approved, the Pineapple Room, closed and was demolished in 2018. Now, importantly, grandfathering does not expand with the operation. It is an exception and is construed strictly against the property owner, and it is not self-proving. And there's precedent for this. In Lafferty versus City of Winchester, the Tennessee Court of Appeals considered a lawful non-conforming bed and breakfast that already included dining, wedding receptions, and private parties. But when it added a bar, live music, and outdoor events, the court upheld the determination that it had become a commercial activity quite different from its original non-conforming use. So the question is not whether Cheekwood was allowed to sell a sandwich and a souvenir in 1978. The question is whether the zoning authority exists for the uses the parking structure will serve in 2026. It does not. Now, if Cheekwood instead says that the restaurant, retail, commercial amusement, and entertainment, outdoor music uses are an accessory to its cultural center special exception, 1716-160 requires express BZA authorization for each of those uses. Cheekwood operated for over a half a century as a museum and botanical garden with a tea room and a gift shop without a 600-plus space garage. The approved accessory use was an 80-seat restaurant. You do not need more than 600 parking spaces for an 80-seat restaurant. Cheekwood's approved use is non-assembly cultural use. But look at what this garage will actually serve. Weddings, private events, concert programming with thousands of attendees, and events like Holiday Lights, which Cheekwood itself says drew 80,000 visitors during the 2024 season alone. Those are not what this board approved in 1978, and they are not the non-assembly cultural uses that is Cheekwood's special exception. But those uses are what create the need for hundreds of parking spaces. The garage cannot borrow its need from the uses that have never been approved, but the legality from completely different uses that were. If this garage is an expansion, it requires BZA approval. If those uses are principal uses, R20 does not permit them. If they are accessory uses, they still require express BZA authorization from this board. Cheekwood applied for and received none of those. The question is not whether Cheekwood could obtain the necessary authority. That application is not before you today. The question is whether Cheekwood had it when this permit was approved. This is a residential neighborhood. The citizens of Nashville expect and deserve this board to apply and enforce the zoning code, as we've seen today. They are entitled to the protections that the code provides. Cheekwood is beloved, and it should not close. But it must obey the law. At some point, the code has to mean what it says. The required approval was never sought, it was never granted, and the zoning administrator could not lawfully approve around it. We respectfully ask this board to reverse the zoning administrator's approval, and I reserve the rest of my time.
Okay, if you'll stay there, because I'm sure we're going to have some questions. Mr. Hargis, did you envision us asking questions now, or did you? Okay.
Your rules allow questions at any time, sir.
Okay. Ms. Atchison, and thank everybody for staying, by the way, and being rolled to the back. And so, Ms. Atchison, I read your letter. I'm sure everybody else did here, too. And I wanted to ask you a question about it because I think you make a very compelling point about the conditional use being in the past a non-assembly cultural, and there is a difference, and I don't think anybody disputes that we're way beyond that with Cheekwood. I looked at the 1996 order, and you state the 1996 order was granted as a non-assembly cultural conditional special use. I don't see the words, I don't see that spelled out in the 1996 order. It does say in the order, the appellant has satisfied all of the conditions for conditional use permit under section 17.24.030 and 17.124.130. Is that where we find that language about the differentiation between assembly and non-assembly?
Could you give me those numbers again? I apologize.
Sure. And this is from the I don't know if those code provisions have changed, but I'm looking at the 96 order.
Yes, sir.
The appellant has satisfied all of the conditions for a conditional use permit under section 1724.030 and 17.124.130. In the current code, there's not a distinction between a cultural center being non-assembly or assembly, not under the current code. So,
so yes, sir, 17.124.130 is non-assembly cultural.
okay, that's where it's found.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. All right, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, give me 1 second. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I scrolled out of my page I was going to use. Okay. Members, I'm going to stay back here because I need access to the Muni Code section that I have, and I need to be able to display it to you that I can. But and I'll be happy to yield some of my time to Metro Legal. But let me first address my letter that I wrote to you on the 18th. I'm sorry, Christy hit reset, and it'll, yeah, get you. There you go. just hit start. Okay, for the record, I'm Joey Hargis. I'm the Metropolitan Zoning Administrator. I wrote a letter on August the 18th, and I said, this matter comes before you based upon my determination that the parking garage issued by our office requires BZA, that this, upon an appeal, that the parking garage requires BZA approval prior to this. And as I note in my letter, there are a large list of instances, Ms. Atchison covered some of those in her presentation, regarding the use determination. I made just a low-level use determination upon the issuance of this parking garage. It is undisputed. This property is zoned R20. This use under the zoning code, I dispute the land use classification was the land use classification that Ms. Atchison talks about in the prior zoning code that was adopted in 1974. That code classified Cheekwood as non-assembly cultural. Under our zoning code that we enforce today was adopted January 1st of 1998, and we classify this use as cultural center under the zoning code.
Right, but in 96, it was classified that the special exception was for cultural non-assembly. I think that's...
Yes, sir, that is the label, and I'm happy to address that a little bit further. I need to make, as part of that appeal, the determination of whether they're outside the bounds of prior BZA approvals. And that investigation is ongoing. I'm still collecting records and having records shipped to me from the Metro Records Center now that includes documents from those prior BZA cases.
But that's kind of the foundational special exception we're working under here, right?
Well, it is for us. If I take a step back. So you've had cases come before this board where prior BZAs have approved special exception uses at that time. And so when they come before this board, assuming the use is still allowed by special exception, I'll look at today's regulations and make an assessment as to look at the requirements today under the zoning code for cultural center. This use, to me, the expansion of the parking garage or the parking lot expansion is not an expansion of the use itself. It is parking provided that is currently off-site at the park, but Cheekwood came wanting to build this parking on-site. There was no expansion of the gardens. There was no expansion of these other appeal cases that Ms. Ashton talks about through 69, 78, 96, the appeal case, were all expansions of the use itself as a cultural center. At that time labeled as non-assembly, currently just flat cultural center. So for me, the parking garage, because it was not an increase or a change to the use of the property of Cheekwood, I determined that it did not need to come to this board for approval. Similarly, like we do for churches, churches are special exceptions under our zoning code. And when churches come to this board or churches come to our office seeking to add on gymnasiums and fellowship halls, we bring them to the Board of Zoning Appeals because that's an expansion of the religious institution use. We don't look at each of those uses as freestanding principal uses. They're, as Ms. Ashton talked about, under 1716-150B, those are accessory uses that this board has to approve. Versus, say, if I have if a church, your church wanted to add parking to its existing parking lot, we don't bring that to this board.
Right, but isn't the difference here, their point is, this is a non-conforming use because it's now become an assembly cultural center. And that's what I'm struggling with. I hear what you're saying, that it's a cultural center.
Christy, could you pause our time since this is under question?
Do you see what the point?
I follow your point.
96.
I respectfully disagree. There are points of the code in which Cheekwood is legally non-conforming to. So when I look at our current zoning code, and I'll put it up here, but let me look at a couple of things here, where it talks about setbacks under the current zoning code, and it talks about, as Ms. Atchison says, typical streets that these must locate under. These requirements are for, if Cheekwood were a blank slate today and wanting to locate, they would have to meet these criteria. Expansions of pre-existing special exceptions are legally non-conforming to these standards. So to the extent they are non-conforming to those standards. So let me give you, for instance, in the zoning code, and I'll post this up here, and forgive me because I cannot see it from I can't look on my screen and see what's up there. You see there's a setback requirement of 100 feet, I believe. Can I borrow one of y'all's laptops? Since you got it.
And this is the current code?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, Chrissy's got it.
Yeah, I can't use your, Christy has one of those ergonomic mices, and I cannot use them. Mice, mices, plural. Okay, I'm reading from the current zoning code, 1716-170B, Cultural Center. The first standard is the lot size. The minimum lot size shall be 3 times the minimum lot area requirement for the zone district, or 2 acres, whichever is less. Now, Cheekwood conforms with this, but let me give you an example. Let's say Cheekwood did not conform with this. Cheekwood would be legally non-conforming to this requirement. Right. Even though in 1996, this requirement may not have existed, so it wasn't applicable. What I'm saying to you, I guess, in the sense of street type requirements, street standards, the requirements of today cannot be imposed upon Cheekwood's prior existence to the code. It would be required to be on a collector street, or the standards that it talks about here, primary access shall be on a collector, which has primary access to a street designated on the major collector street plan. That would be applicable to Cheekwood, should Cheekwood be brand new today, asking you for permission to exist. To the extent that Cheekwood doesn't comply with today's regulations, it is legally non-conforming to that. Now, expansions of Cheekwood. If I had made a determination that this parking garage was an expansion of Cheekwood, I would go through the list of conditions there and apply the ones that they have to, that they meet to it. For instance, lot size they meet. Setbacks, I would look at whether or not this thing they're building is 100 foot from a residential zoning district. And number 2, we would require the installation of landscape buffers in B and number 3. Number 4, the street standards, they don't meet. They cannot meet. They didn't have to meet at the time they existed. They are legally non-conforming to those. And then number 5's not applicable because it talks about an industrial thing. So in this example, I looked at what they're building, which is a parking garage. And because I felt it was not an expansion of the use, I required them to meet the bulk regulations of the zoning code, which are the setback requirements in 1712 020B. Which require the setback requirements from, and I'll read you the table itself, but the district bulk tables in 1712-020B discuss multifamily, mobile home, and non-residential uses when located in a residential zone district. Now, when located in the residential zone district is my add to that label. But when you look at the table, all the zoning districts in that chart violating some condition of a prior board's approval, I've got to get those records. Some of the problems with that are technological in nature. The Board of Zoning Appeals in the 1969 case, for instance, recorded their meetings in shorthand, which A, I can't read, but B, also recorded it on a blue record, for lack of a better term. I should have brought it with you. It's a clear record. I need a record player, to play those on. So the technology has changed. I need to listen to the discussions like we're doing here. We didn't have the benefit of YouTube to watch, but I need to see what's involved. We do have, the Code Department does have are the orders and the information that are tied to the permits. But
Mr. Hargis, you said earlier you're investigating the violations. I guess my question is, if Cheekwood may be in violation of a use permit, is it appropriate to issue a garage permit?
Well, I think they're separate in and of themselves. They're not specifically tied to another. There's not a section in the zoning code that requires me to withhold permits that I'm aware of due to a zoning violation. And again, this is an allegation. The process for allegations that come to this board for special exception use, you've read it in your own rules that there are show cause hearings that can occur where an applicant for special exceptions is in violation of the terms that you've placed upon it or conditions that you've placed upon it. The first step of that is to have the allegation made to the zoning administrator or to the Codes Department. Step two is we would investigate and see, oh, it is substantiated, they are violating it, or no, they're not violating it. Either decision I make, one way or the other, is appealable to this board. So if let's say I agree with Ms. Atchison and Cheekwood's in direct violation of their case, I would write Cheekwood an abate notice and spell out for them here the things that you're in violation of. Cheekwood would have the opportunity to comply, bring them into compliance if they can, come to this board and appeal that decision. Third, as you've seen in a case, prior cases, come to this board and ask to amend old conditions from a special exception back years ago, maybe that aren't applicable anymore.
Like Seven Hills.
Well, I didn't want to, since that case before us, I don't want to discuss the merits of that case, but we've had similarities of other cases before.
Mr. Hargis?
Yes, ma'am.
And I may not be thinking about this correctly. I understand your argument to me that they're sort of separate, like what we're dealing with today is separate from what you're investigating because you're dealing with technology from like the 80s. So, but I have a question.
50s, but yes.
But if, let's say, in a perfect world, because I think it's not perfect in this case, the timing, but let's say, and we won't use this as an example, let's say it was another entity that applied for a permit that was separate from its use, but you had a bunch of complaints that were ongoing that you guys were investigating, would you have approved the permit? And I know you may not be able to answer it because it's a what if, but that is sort of my question.
I don't mind answering the what if. If the complaints are directly related to what is in front of me, let's say the complaints are, well, it's tough with hypothetical. If they're on point to what they're actually constructing, sure. I mean, I think there needs to be an accounting of, hey, what's going on? It's hard to say in your example, Ms. Davis, but the things in regards to some of the accusations, Ms. Atchison's letter talk about noise and talk about, even our current zoning code in the specific requirements, there's nothing about noise in that list that you see there. The general conditions talk about compatibility, integrity of adjacent areas, architectural compatibility. Those conditions in 1716-150 are places where you can address more generalized situations, not specific to the code where it spells out you got to do this, this, and this. And you've seen cases come to this board where an applicant didn't meet one of these specific conditions. We treat that as a special exception for use and a variance from that condition, and they have to put on a hardship case.
So from your perspective, would you say that because the parking garage is not related to the use, that is how you sort of looked at it and you didn't consider it? Is that fair?
Correct. It's parking being provided for Cheekwood's current use. That everyone knows is currently exists. There are some on-site, there are some off-site in the Metro Park. You've got a letter, I believe, from the mayor's office in your packet where and I'm not forgive me if I misstate this, but I'm not as familiar with the inner workings between the Parks Department and Cheekwood, but my understanding is that the parking that's occurring in the park has got to get off the park's property at some future point in time. Some of that plays into, well, they're building on site, which is obviously in the zoning code. If this were a new facility going in today, we would look at the parking section of the zoning code and it would spell out, I think cultural center is determined by the traffic engineer. That parking has to be on site. It can't be off site without your approval. So there are instances in all of this entire sort of larger interconnected, like I said, there's been 7 or 8 different appeal cases that have come to this board. And when you look back through them, the history of those are all related to the use of Cheekwood. Expansion of the mansion, addition of the retail shop, addition of the restaurants. They added greenhouses and educational buildings as a part of that. Things that didn't come to this board during that entire period are like all the tent permits that the Codes Department used to issue for. We no longer issue tent permits, but all the tents for any event they had out there, the Swan Ball, the this or that, our permit records are replete, hundreds of pages of permits issued by our office for, one could argue accessory uses to Cheekwood, but they never came to the board because both the administrators that I worked for, Mr. West, and prior ones, if it wasn't specific to the use, and I use the church example, the churches wanted to add a picnic pavilion we're probably going to issue that without sending it to the board. Now, if you're adding a fellowship hall or you're adding worship space, you're coming to this board because it's to the use of the property. The 10 by 12 shed or any size shed a church or a special exception want to do, we're going to issue that permit because it's not to the use, it's not an expansion of the use. In this example, Cheekwood's different from a lot of special exceptions that you run into in that it's existing and it was approved either, some of the records look at it existed at the time it originally formed, it was a permitted by right use in the county zoning code. When Metro formed and the adoption, Metro operated under 2 zoning codes for a time. So from 64 till 1974, this jurisdiction of metropolitan government operated with 2 different sets of rules. And then in 74 is when they unified the zoning code into what we call COMZO, the comprehensive zoning code. And which, when Ms. Atchison talks about that classification of non-assembly cultural, that's a definition out of that code. And then in 98, we adopted this zoning regulations.
I have a question related to the use. We heard some testimony that there are other uses in this building. It's not just parking. And maybe you might have to answer this later after we hear what those uses are.
I can do, what I saw in the drawings was a replacement for a ticket collection booth. There was previously a ticket booth on this property as you entered the site. They were relocating it to this garage, so it was, essentially a swap for what was there, what they're doing in this. But
Okay, so you didn't see a new use?
I did not see that.
Okay.
And as I did have discussion with Cheekwoods when they came to see me for submittal, if this were expansion of new garden areas, new buildings for the botanical garden related to the use, they're coming to this board. And another prime example that's been in the news recently.
Okay, but how's that different from the parking garage? I mean,
Well,
they already have a botanical garden.
I'll give you a perfect example. The Nashville Zoo that's been in the news lately built a very large garage out there. Did not come to this board for it. The zoo is a special exception. It exists in the AR2A zone district, I believe, by special exception.
I mean, but are you just thinking about it because it's a parking garage? It's always going to be the same use because.
Yes, I mean, the garage itself, just as in the zoo example, our office issued that garage permit because it's not a zoo. I mean, it's a parking garage. It didn't speak to the expansion of the zoo's use by including new parking on site. And related in this, I use the same example that this parking expansion on the property is not an expansion of Cheekwood's use of the property.
If I may, just for my clarification purpose, so you are arguing about accessory use because not every accessory use does come to our board, but you are entitled to, for example, like a detached accessory unit.
I'm sorry, I would correct you on that. My first letter dated the 17th, I wrote accessory use all through it. Ms. Atchison, I sent it to them, I sent it to Cheekwood, I posted it in your files. A review of the code in 16150B expressly says that accessory uses have to come to this board. So I used that term in my first letter, and which is why I have an amended letter, obviously not saying that. And the reason for that is none of these examples that I've given you, the parking lot expansion of churches, the Nashville Zoo's parking garage expansion, none of those were considered accessory or part of the use. I think of accessory use like the retail shop. As I mentioned in my letter, accessory uses would be separate land uses that would be considered incidental and subordinate to the principal use. So examples on this site, and I'm reading from my letter now, include the retail gift shop and cafe, which were located on site. And those came to this board and got approval in 78.
But why isn't a parking garage customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use?
It's just been our policy that when we look at, let's take your special exception for churches, we wouldn't look at it at the parking as being a separate land use category, like we would typical accessory uses like retail, like the restaurant use. So for an example of when we would use parking lots as a principal use would be your paid parking lots that you see around town with a little QR code you scan to park there. The parking lot that's tied to the restaurant that you go to, isn't considered part of the restaurant use. It's just parking required under the zoning code to support that use. But I distinguish it in my mind because as an accessory use, clearly has to come to this board. And those examples that I cited to you, the retail establishment, the greenhouses.
I mean, I understand you've treated it that way historically, but if I look at the definition, a use of land or of a building or a portion thereof that is customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use, it just seems to me like that's a parking garage.
Yeah, you certainly, that's Ms. Ashton's position. I would tell you that's.
I'm giving you a chance to.
No, I can't. I wouldn't agree that that's to use. If Cheekwood were not there and somebody wanted to build a parking garage on this piece of property that's R20, let's say it's parking for the adjoining park next door. Well, they're denied because it's a vacant piece of property. The parking garage is the principal use of the property that's going on here.
So if it is an accessory use, then would you agree they'd have to?
If it were accessory use, it would have to come here, yes, sir. Yeah, there's no question about that. That's true in the prior code. That's true in the current code. I believe the language that's in our current code may be a mimic of the prior zoning regulations too. But all of that has to be considered. And just to give everybody in the room, I'm going to draft a report. Here's what I determined based off Ms. Ashton's letter, and we'll go line by line with her letter and show, based on all the appeal cases that went to the zoning board, did the boards at that time make that requirement that, hey, it restricts you to the number of events a year. It restricts, we just got to go through and see whether they discussed parking, whether they discussed. The 96 case specifically does have some mention of parking. It mentions some aggregate parking being approved on site. My understanding and part of her complaint is that has either been demolished or reconstructed, not as aggregate. Those are things, if we find it to be the case, they're going to have to correct it. Either come back here and seek removal of those conditions or amend new conditions upon their use.
Questions?
So if there are currently violations based on the prior approvals, that we are not to consider that. We are considering.
No, because it's not right for you to do so, because the proper process is for us, our office, to investigate it, make sure they're substantiated or not, give a report to the complainant. The complainant then can come here if they disagree with our interpretation. Cheekwood could come here and there may be an instance they both come here. Maybe both parties disagree with parts of our determination. I'm having a hard time not referencing our other case on our agenda today.
But that's forthcoming, is what, that's in the works through the,
yes,
the blue record and microfilm.
It is not I wish it, in this modern day, I wish it were a speedy process that, it's ask AI to do this or click here. It is not. It is a labor-intensive process dealing with technology that it's great. They kept a copy of the media of the meeting, but I don't have the player to play it. So we got to figure out a plan B. Even I'll give you a perfect example. I've got an employee that retired that's coming back to look at some of these old files for me and also helping us send older documents to archives. I don't know what they are. But he worked here at a time. Oh yeah, I know exactly what this is. So kind of relying on the folks that were here before me is.
Does Metro have a number of parking spaces that are on Parks property?
I'm not certain as far as.
There's a letter in the record about that, I believe, about how many there.
Yeah, I just wondered if Metro had an agreement or concurrence on that.
Okay. Any more questions from Mr. Argus?
All right. Well, I did a little balance time. To the extent Metro Legal wishes to have that, I'm happy to turn over to them if they don't.
We might want to hear back from Ms. Atchison, I think, before and let her rebut what you said, I think. Is everybody okay with that, or do you want to go to?
Well, if I may, your rules talk about going through each kind of Cheekwood, hear from Cheekwood, hear from opposition, and then have a rebuttal period.
So you're yielding some of your time to.
Oh, I have no rebuttal period. This is it for me. I mean, you in your rules, you can question me anytime you wish, so at any point.
Who do we want to hear from next? You want to hear from Ms. Epstein?
Yeah. The next party who would be those parties representing Cheekwood, Mr. Cooper, any other council that's present. I know I saw a couple gentlemen in the back of the room. So just a reminder for all parties, Ms. Ashton went first, I've gone second. Cheekwood will go next, and then from anybody else that wishes to talk in the fourth round for 10 minutes. And again, as you saw in that part, doesn't include any questions or answers there too. Mr. Chairman, Cheekwood submitted a PowerPoint. Let me bring that to the front. And okay. All right, gentlemen, if you would please identify yourselves to the board and make your presentation.
Good afternoon, John Cooper with the law firm Holland & Knight, 150 3rd Avenue South, here on behalf of Cheekwood Botanical Garden and Museum of Art. With me is my co-counsel, Bill Harbison, with Sherrard Rowe, Voight & Harbison. As Joey indicated, the single question before this board is, did the zoning administrator err in approving the permit for the parking pavilion? The answer is no, and I will explain why in 3 parts. First, Cheekwood's long history of operation as a lawful use. 2, the legal protections for that use. And 3, why parking is a permitted component of a cultural center. I would like to submit a petition with over 56,000 signatures, including zip codes of people who are asking this board to uphold the zoning administrator's decision. We also have many folks here in support of Cheekwood. In the interest of time, we are not asking them to speak. You also have a letter from the mayor's office supporting this project based upon our partnership with Metro, which I will speak to. You also have letters of support that were submitted by citizens to the board. So Cheekwood commenced operations as Tennessee Botanical Gardens and Fine Art Museum in 1959. At that time, they were operating under the 1947 code, which permitted institutions of an educational, religious, or philanthropic character by right in the zoning district. The zoning ordinance was not amended to remove that permitted use until December 1959, which was after Cheekwood had already been operating. Cheekwood, as it's known today, that the institution took over operation in May 1960, and the museum and gardens have been in continuous operation for 65 years. As mentioned, the 1996 order that Appellant relies on was limited to approving the construction of a greenhouse, 2 maintenance storage buildings, and an addition to the stable. It did not purport to govern all of Cheekwood's operations. Cheekwood had already been operating for over 30 years. Next slide, please. Tennessee's non-conforming use statute, TCA 137208, protects legally non-conforming uses in perpetuity. The statute provides that any commercial establishment in operation or permitted to operate prior to a zoning change shall be allowed to continue in operation and even expand. Cheekwood is the functional equivalent of a commercial operation. It's open to the public, it has paid ticketing, et cetera. So the statute provides that no building permit shall be denied for the business or an expansion prior to the change in zoning. And we submit that Cheekwood is grandfathered under state law, and so therefore any other zoning restrictions that would come after Cheekwood started operating are not, frankly, not applicable. Next slide. But even if that's not the case, cultural centers are permitted as a special exception use in R20. The zoning code itself, and this is very important, includes express parking requirements for cultural centers. 1 space per 300 square feet at a minimum. If the zoning code permits or requires parking for cultural centers, then parking is by definition a permitted use. It's not an accessory use or an expansion. It is required by the zoning code. The zoning administrator correctly determined that parking is permitted as part of the primary cultural center use. And more importantly, it's being built pursuant to a memorandum of understanding with Metro. I provided a memo to you earlier this week. That MOU is Exhibit B to that memo. The MOU is. And the purpose of the MOU is to transition the overflow parking from the Parks property, where Cheekwood has had parking for decades, to an on-site facility. This was a very public process. Metro decided it's time for Cheekwood to figure out its own parking solution. And so we have, to the tune of a $35 million parking pavilion. The MOU sets forth very strict timelines that Cheekwood has to provide this on-site parking solution. December 2027 is the date when this has to be completed, and a delay would make that deadline an impossibility. Next slide, please. Before the MOU, under the old structure with Metro, there were 949 total spaces, including those that were on-site and the park property. Once this parking pavilion is built, there will be 837 spaces. That's a net reduction of 112 parking spaces. As Exhibit D to my memo is a memo that KCI provided that confirms that the parking pavilion will not generate any additional trips, and it frees up acres of parks land that had been previously used by Cheekwood for parking. So the appellant is basically challenging a project that reduces parking, removes cars from a public park, and is contrary to an MOU approved by the Planning Commission and Metro Parks. Next slide, please. Neither the appeal nor Ms. Atchison's letter identify any basis for overturning the zoning administrator's decision regarding issuing the permit for the garage. The letter catalogs a host of alleged violations that are not before you today. So the only question is whether the zoning administrator was correct in issuing the permit. Next slide, please. The appellant's own, to show that this has been a long-standing discussion, long-term discussion, the appellants sent an email going back to 2022. If you can go to the next slide, please. It's kind of hard to see, but he labels the proposed garage next to his house in pink, which is where Cheekwood had planned to build a garage, and better placement for the garage, shown in black, further from his house. Cheekwood actually moved the pavilion's placement to the better placement area shown to accommodate the neighbors. Next slide, please. This shows the new garage location, which is farther away from the appellant's house, and the area where the original garage was proposed. Next slide. This is an aerial showing the current parking garage and the property line, and the appellant's home is to the bottom right corner. This is what it will look like, showing where the parking pavilion has been moved further to the left. So in conclusion, Cheekwood has operated continuously as a public museum and botanical garden since 1959 and is a protected, legally non-conforming use. But regardless of the grandfathering provisions and protections, the parking pavilion is permitted as part of Cheekwood's primary cultural use. The project actually reduces total available parking by 112 spaces. It will not generate any additional trips. And we do not believe that the appellant has identified errors in the zoning administrator's determination. So we respectfully request that you uphold the zoning administrator's decision in full and deny the item A appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. We're probably going to have some questions.
I had a question. So Ms. Atchison relies on Lafferty versus the city of Winchester. And in that decision, it says that property owners who qualify as a non-conforming use under Tennessee Code annotated may expand their business operations or even reconstruct them as long as they continue to be engaged in the same business that they were engaged in when the zoning ordinance was passed. I guess my question is, and I think the crux of the argument is that they're saying that this isn't the same use that was approved. And so that's why they have an issue. And it's sort of like this parking pavilion is a symbol of that, if I just synthesize it. That's how I understand it. So I guess, and I mean, I've been in Nashville my entire life. Cheekwood has changed a lot since I've been here. So what would be your counter to that argument? Just that, like, you argued that it's the same use, it hasn't changed. I think they're arguing that it is, and they pointed to some specific examples of the light show and other things like that. Are you just saying that's all, those programs are all a part of the central use?
Yes, we believe that they are. That's also what Mr. Hargis said they are reviewing and looking back at old Board of Zoning Appeals approvals to see if there were any restrictions on use. But the use is cultural center. The parking is part of the cultural center. So it's one and the same.
Okay.
Do you think now there's a difference between a cultural center, a non-assembly cultural
Yes.
center and assembly? It's not, and would you agree that they're now an assembly cultural center? And they are
Yes,
not-
I mean,
they're
I
not
think
just- that's not how they started.
under the rules of statutory construction, I mean, you would, obviously, removing the word non-assembly, we have to take it that the council did that on purpose. And so in the new zoning code, you do not have that limitation.
So they're conforming, even though they're an assembly cultural center now, is what you're saying?
Our opinion is, yes, they are in conformance.
So the other question is, why is building this garage not an accessory use? That's what I'm also struggling with,
Because it's fulfilling the parking needs and requirements for the use. It's not, now, if they were going to build a pickleball court or something that was not required by and related to that cultural center use, that would be an accessory use that would have to come to this board. But we submit that parking does not fall within that.
okay. And is Cheekwood taking the risk that if it goes forward, and let's just say hypothetically could build this garage and spend $300 million or whatever in a matter of a month, isn't it taking a risk that if it is found in violation of the permit, that it's got this parking garage there that it's spent a lot of money on and now it's in violation of the permit?
Well,
I guess the point I'm making is you are taking that risk, aren't you? I mean, because you have this.
Well, we had this MOU that required, this agreement with Metro that requires us to provide on-site parking. And this is the only way to do it and preserve the aesthetic beauty of the garden. And so all Metro agencies reviewed this permit and signed off. And so we believe we are operating in compliance with the law. So, I guess every building is a risk to some standpoint, but we believe that we're in compliance with the law.
More questions, anybody? The grandfathering statute that was acted in 1973 applies to industrial, commercial, and business, and your position is Cheekwood is a business?
For purposes of that statute, that's how it's operating, yes.
I looked at that statute. There weren't any defined terms in it, but it seems to me couldn't it be considered an institutional, Cheekwood be considered an institution that would not fall under that statute? Because I know in the Metro zoning code, there, we have commercial business, and then there's an institutional use, which is where I think cultural centers fall.
I mean, we think that given the operations that have gone on there for decades, that it functions like a commercial operation. I mean, they sell tickets. You have, as was mentioned, a gift shop, restaurant uses. So we believe that it operates like a business. But even, I didn't mention this, but the prior grandfathering Cheekwood was grandfathered before the grandfathering statute even went into effect. It was grandfathered under old Nashville city zoning ordinances after, because it was approved under the 1947 ordinance, which allowed this use by right, period. And so, we believe that it was grandfathered even before that statute went into effect.
Was it grandfathered as non-assembly, though? I mean, that was the code that was.
No, the non-assembly was just in the code that was, I guess, COMZO. It was not in the 1947 code that Cheekwood was approved under.
But it was in the 96 code.
Yes, whatever code was in effect at the time they were back here for the greenhouse.
Right. Okay.
If I may, just one question. So, non-conforming, conforming, it's quite an argument. But put that aside, let's argue Cheekwood is now under current classification. It's a cultural center in the current classification.
Yes,
because zone has changed over the years, 60 years. But under the current classification, if we were to agricultural center, have to have parking. And up till this year or recently, the Cheekwood was heavily relied on Metro law to fulfill that zoning parking requirement. That's what I was trying to understand. That's your position?
Yes, that it for decades, it fulfilled its parking requirements by using Metro property. And Metro Park said, we don't want you doing that anymore. And so we negotiated and agreed to this MOU where we would put the parking on our site and make it our problem.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to think through this out loud a little bit. If Cheekwood in general were grandfathered in the 40s, then the assembly, what the code says now, it's all irrelevant.
Correct.
Because it's grandfathered as a permitted use back in the 40s. And the non-conforming only came in as part of that special exception via an expansion in the 90s. And now it's no longer a term. So.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have...
Board now hear from any other interested party who wish to come forth. You'll have 10 minutes to present your testimony to the board. So if there are any parties who wish to address the board in any direction, please come forward now.
All these people and no one's coming forward.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, seeing no parties coming forward, Ms. Atchison, is time for her rebuttal. Christy, you have the time. Ms. Atchison, I'm putting your remaining time back up of 1 minute, 31 seconds for rebuttal. Of course, obviously, time will not run for any questions or your answers there, too.
We'll go rapid fire.
All right.
All right, Counsel for Cheekwood made a really important point, and that is that they consider Cheekwood to be a business at this point, and we agree. They should probably update their zoning per that. Second, express parking requirements. They really hammered on that, but there's an equally important requirement in that same code, or in that same section, which requires direct collector street access. That's also a requirement, and Cheekwood doesn't meet it. Now, to get a zoning permit application, they must demonstrate compliance with all applicable provisions of the zoning code. And to be clear, the MOU requires Cheekwood parking to be off Parks land. It does not require a facility on their property. With all due respect to Mr. Hargis, there is no classification of use as Cheekwood. There are specific classifications of use. They have been approved for a restaurant and a retail operation. That is not what is necessitating this structure. You do not need 600 parking spaces for the uses that have been authorized. It is the unauthorized uses that necessitate this parking garage, including outdoor entertainment, wedding venue, event facility, et cetera. Now, I go back to the fact that grandfathering is construed strictly and against the property holder, and it does not increase with the expansion of the operation. This is not an ordinary by right commercial parcel. Cheekwood operates by special exception, and 1716-150 expressly requires BZA authorization for accessory uses to a special exception.
I have a quick question. So for the case that you provided, and I just want to ask you to kind of apply it to this case, essentially the crux of it, the court basically said that when the property began and it was annexed by the city of Winchester, it was a bed and breakfast. And that the only thing it could expand to is a bigger and better bed and breakfast, not anything else, without the approval of a board. Is your argument essentially because there wasn't approval for these other uses, like they said they're a business now, right? It wasn't what the special exception initially applied to. That's why this parking structure shouldn't be allowed, because of it's basically to complement that new use. Is that fair? Did I say that right?
Right, so it is the unapproved uses that necessitate this new parking garage. It is, and we can't say that, well, it's Cheekwood as is today, because Cheekwood as is today includes a plethora of unauthorized uses, including the wedding venue, the outdoor music, et cetera, et cetera. And we can't use Cheekwood as a zoning definition. It has been approved for a restaurant and a small retail operation. You don't need this kind of structure to support that, and you can't use those uses to say, well, this is just an accessory to the unauthorized uses that this board has never approved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a really long time since I've been to Cheekwood, I'm sad to say. And you mentioned a wedding venue. Is that in a separate building than the main house?
Cheekwood has, I believe, at least 4 separate wedding venues, and those are advertised on its website. You can get married on the Swan Lawn. There are various, you can get married in the Japanese Garden, et cetera, et cetera. Each of those venues holds a different number of people, but you can have hundreds of people at your wedding at Cheekwood, and there are, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of weddings a year at Cheekwood. They're lovely, they're gorgeous, right? But they've never been authorized by this board.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we hear from the legal if there is any addition?
Yeah, I think that's it next.
Yes. As we've been sitting here, I think there's a couple different things going on.
More than a couple.
Yeah. It's the Department of Law's opinion that they are grandfathered under the 1947 code. Therefore, these current rules about how you have to be on a collector street, et cetera, those types of things don't apply. They came and they asked for a special exception permit. I don't think that means they would have lost their grandfathering, but if we're looking at it in that light, they have a valid special exception permit today. Their are suggestions that they are violating it or they are exceeding it. And Mr. Hargis is going to look into that, and if so, then they're entitled to have the opportunity to refute those allegations or ask to amend their permit or to come into compliance if you determine they're not violating their permit. Today, they have a valid permit, and so the question for you today is it necessary for you guys to opine on whether they can have a garage? And the parking is inherent in their valid permit because the code says they have to have at least a certain number of parking spaces. And they're basically moving their parking from outside their gate to inside their gate. So it just does not appear from a legal perspective that this is a new use that is appropriate for you guys to, or necessary, I'm sorry, that it's a new use that's necessary for the BZA to opine on.
Question, so, but Mr. Hargis has said if it was an accessory use, right, then they would need BZA approval. And that's where I'm getting stuck, because I read this definition, it says a use of land or a building or a portion thereof that is customarily incidental and subordinate. And to me, that's not the gift shop, or that's incidental and subordinate. And to me, that's a parking garage or whatever. But that's where, so how is it not an accessory use, the parking garage?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think since then, I thought originally was my understanding, but after I read latest Mr. Hargis's explanation letter, he is not considering garage as accessory use, rather required use or classified use as a cultural center. Because if there's a classification as cultural center, that requires parking. I think that's what Mr. Hargis answered in the beginning. Because that was my starting point as well, if it is accessory use or not accessory use. But I think Mr. Hargis clarified it is indeed not accessory use.
Well, that's where I'm getting stuck still.
Yeah, I think because it's structured, it's just where your brain goes.
Well,
It's not a use at all. It's not a land use, even though it's in a structure. It's like if right on this side of the fence where Percy Warner is, was a perfectly rectangular paved 600 lot parking lot. And then they just quit using it and built it on the other side of that fence. That's not an accessory use or land use. It's complicated because the existing parking's all spread around, and some of it's gravel, some of it's paved, some of it's grass, and now it's going to be it's not a paved parking lot, it's a $35 million structure, but it's still just the same thing as the spread out sporadic parking on Percy Warner. It's serving the same purpose.
but they're building a new building. That's what so Ms. Fox, I'm still.
I agree that ordinarily it would seem like it's accessory to this, but it's not a use as defined under our Metro Code. I think that's the difference. Parking is not a use defined under the Metro Code, unless it's the kind of parking where you have, where you're serving the public, like we see downtown with surface parking lots. That's what's defined as parking, a parking use.
Other uses would be daycare centers, businesses. That's what you're, when you're referring to use, that's what you're referring to.
Correct. If I was applying for a nightclub, I don't say I want a nightclub and parking. I say I want a nightclub, and then Metro requires a certain number of parking spaces, and I think that's what we have here.
Okay, any more questions? I don't think we have anybody else to hear from. I think that's it, isn't it, Mr. August? All right, we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
I'll start. You know, as complicated as this seems like, but I think in my head, I try to simplify. So Cheekwood, if Cheekwood were to apply today as existed today, they will never be able to get permit. But Cheekwood has been existed 60 years. And so it is legally non-conforming. And then I think over the years, our classification, what we call Cheekwood, has changed. And parking, you know, currently a cultural center, and cultural center required parking under the metro zoning code. And so unfortunately or fortunately, Cheekwood has been using metal land as required parking. But this is going, so now Cheekwood is building the parking. Not structure, it does not matter. Just try to meet the code to provide necessary adequate parking. So if I think through that simple mind, to me, a zoning administrator did not err by issuing the parking. So that's my simple take on this complicated, difficult issue.
I would agree with that, and I'm certainly glad we're not discussing are there current violations conversation today, and I'm glad that's being dealt with. One comparison I just looked up is pond/lake is a land use in the zoning code. It's strange enough, but it is. In residential districts, it's only allowed as a special exception. But if you're building a subdivision and you have to build a lake or a pond for stormwater, you don't come to the Board of Zoning Appeals to do that because it's a component to that point. It is not a use. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. And it also helps me alleviate the struggles in the fact that it is a reduction in parking number. Therefore, it is the component of parking is not being expanded.
I have a related question, a zoning question. Where this is zoned, I don't think we're in the UZO, so I don't think there's a limit on the amount of spaces you can have on this property. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this place is outside the EZOs.
So the argument that there's more spaces because of some potential unauthorized use is not a valid, not something we need to discuss.
I mean, there are sections of the code that have a minimum and a maximum parking spaces, but that's not where we are here.
Okay, thanks.
So here's a question too are we talking about an accessory use or an accessory or ancillary building? Because that's defined in the code. And means a structure detached from the principal building located on the same lot that is customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal building. And does that make a difference? Would that need BZA approval?
Give us a second to look into that question.
What's that?
Give us just 1 second to look into it.
I don't think I can answer your question off the top of my head about accessory building, but the code, if I look at 1716-150, it talks about needing to come to the BZA if you have an accessory use.
It doesn't say anything about accessory building.
No.
Yeah, and I don't think that accessory building is a separate use either.
Right.
So-
Well, and that would support y'all's interpretation, I think. It doesn't use the language accessory building.
Correct.
Correct.
Your position would be you only have to come to the BZA for an accessory use.
Right, that's what the code says.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. Ms. Davis, thoughts?
I don't have any just yet. I'm still mulling in my mind.
Okay. Well, I mean, to me, this is about process, really, today. I do think it's that the non-conforming use was it started as non-assembly, and I think it's a very compelling point that that's not what it is anymore. But that's going to be dealt with at another time because that's being dealt with by Metro. So the issue today is, is it our position we should have to give BZA approval to this parking garage? And I was really struggling with this accessory use, but I think this would be an accessory building, not an accessory use. The accessory use, the fact that there's a definition of an accessory building supports their interpretation about use has to do with something other than the building, and that's not in the code. So I don't think the administrator erred based on that. So. And I don't, in terms of the grandfathering, it would seem that it may be grandfathered in. I'm a little troubled by the fact that this is what I would consider an institutional use, not a business use. And that is just really muddy for me because of the way this thing has evolved and the way this 96 order is written. It is limited to a greenhouse, the storage buildings, in addition to the stables.
And the fact that they came for approval of those things, but they haven't come back for all these other things over the last 30 years. That was 30 years ago. And so in that time, a lot has changed. I mean, their own counsel is describing it as a business when it's really classified as an institutional use. So I will say that I agree with you, but I also agree that that's where I'm stuck. I agree with you. I don't think Mr. Hargis erred. I understand why he made the decision he made. I don't think it was arbitrary or capricious. It makes sense why he made that decision. But I think it's a little muddy too, because I think that they are grandfathered in, but have they gone beyond that, which is what would prompted the need, in part, not completely, in part, for this parking structure.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just troubled by if they're beyond their permit, building a parking garage. But to me, they're kind of taking that risk because I view that as that's under investigation, and it may be back before us. I don't know where it'll go, but that's.
I had similar thoughts, but because there's no cap on the amount of parking they can have, there's no max, there's no limit, so they're allowed to have as much parking as they want, unfortunately. So I think the other
Yeah, but if we had heard those other uses, let's say this was flipped, which I know it's not, so we're probably going to have to just pass this on. But if this was flipped and we heard about all those other uses, we would then make conditions for the parking, right? In which people would have input at a hearing and everything else, because that's what we typically do. The problem here is that the timeline, really. So we're just kind of stuck with the facts that we have. The facts that we have is that Mr. Hargis got a permit. He typically, in any other circumstance, he would approve it based off of the current use and what it's asking for. But I think what the opposition is essentially saying is that, whoa, they're pointing out all these other things and they want to show cause hearing, but that isn't what we're here to discuss. And to your point, Mr. Pepper, Cheekwood is sort of taking a risk because if there is a show cause hearing and they do come back, then we might come back based off of whatever the evidence is, which I don't know what it will be. We might say, oh, well, based off of this evidence, maybe the parking should be X, Y, and Z. So we don't have the benefit of the future. We don't have the benefit of that evidence. So even though I am struggling with it too, maybe it is best just to deal with this narrow issue and then know that this likely is going to come back.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes back to be amended, we could put, if they come back for an amendment to what they have, we could put conditions on it and, so. Are we ready for a motion, or did everybody get a chance to, you weighed in, didn't you, so? Okay, I will, for the reasons I've talked about, and I will say that what we're deciding today is a very narrow issue, and I think there are things that are, for lack of a better word, under investigation with Mr. Hargis, and there are real questions about what's happened with Cheekwood and where they've gone with this nonconformity, and does it exceed what they should be allowed? But I make a motion that we uphold the decision of the zoning administrator to issue the permit.
I'll second. Go ahead. I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, that passes. And I believe that's it.
Okay, BZA is adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.